The Plymouth Township Planning Commission meeting will come to order if the secretary at 7 p.m. If the secretary please call roll.
Dennis Cebulski.
Here.
Tim Boyd.
Here.
Kendra Barberina is here. Bob Dorshevitz.
Here.
Stuart Pott.
Here.
Dave Ladowicz.
Here. And a motion to approve the agenda, but we have some changes, and the secretary will read those off.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we remove the approval of the minutes, item number 4, for the September 4th, 2024 study session, because we had already approved those at our September 18th meeting.
Support.
Okay, it's moved by Commissioner Barberina, supported by Commissioner Boyd to remove item 4 of tonight's agenda, approval of the September 4th minutes. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Any other changes? If not, is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
Second, or
Okay.
support.
Moved by Commissioner Boyd and supported by Commissioner Pop to approve the amended agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the September 18th minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes of the September 8th, 2024 meeting as presented.
There's support?
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Barberina, supported by Commissioner Boyd to approve the September 18th minutes. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Skipping to item number 5, public comments. This is a chance for anyone here that wishes to speak to any non-agenda item. So does anyone want to speak to any non-agenda item? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on. We have a public hearing for application 2540, the school, rezoning at Schoolcraft 42303. And the planner will read our report.
Yep. All right, so this first item on the agenda is the public hearing for the rezoning at 42303 Schoolcraft Road. This is initiated by the township after we were notified of this property being zoned PL. So the property is currently zoned PL, public lands, to the R, and is requesting rezoning to the R1 one-family residential district. The site is currently the site of a single-family home. It is a single parcel, 0.73 acres inside. It's on the southwest side of Schoolcraft Road, north of M14, next door to Friendship Station, if you're familiar. We did a review of so the process for amending the township's zoning map is the Planning Commission holding a public hearing, which is now. The Planning Commission must review the request and make a recommendation to the Board of Trustees, and the Board of Trustees makes the final determination and approval, as this is amending the township zoning map. I will move through I will summarize what we say in our review, going through the 6 criteria for evaluating rezoning request. We found that this request fit all 6 recommendations. The existing home, which was constructed in 1925, has been an existing home in its existing use of the site. We believe that the property was at some point rezoned in error. So this rezoning will encourage continued investment from the property owner into the physical property itself in a manner which maintains the current character of the property. This furthers the master plan goal to preserve positive living environments. The residential use of the parcel will not change with this rezoning request. Again, this rezoning will preserve the detached single-unit residential development. It's consistent in scale and intensity with surrounding properties. The site will now be better able to comply with the dimensional requirements. It will no longer have to comply with the zoning requirements of the PL district, which require higher setbacks than are feasible on this site. So in conclusion, we recommend the proposed rezoning to the R1 one-family district is recommended for approval to the Board of Trustees. The Planning Department's in full support of this rezoning. And our findings of fact are listed on the conclusions page on page 5.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone here that wishes to, yes, come on. Right up here, yes, if you give us your name. You're the current owner of the property, or?
I am Carol Hamlin Walborn. I am the daughter of the deceased. We, as a family, 2 brothers, are here in support of getting this rezoning done. We're not sure why, but as of 2004, there was some type of rezoning that was done. We do have a buyer that's interested in purchasing that land and using it for his residence. So we are trying to take care of the estate of our parents, which this is part of it. And this is one of the things that we need, obviously, to get done so that the transaction can go through. But we are in full support of getting this done and being able to move forward with sale.
Are there any questions from the commission? Okay, well, thank you very much. Are there any further discussion amongst ourselves? Is there a motion? Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot the public hearing. So I'll open the public hearing at 7:07. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak to this? Okay, hearing none, we'll close the public hearing at 7:08. Now, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve application number 254, recommend approval to the Board of Trustees for application 2540 for the rezoning of the parcel at 42303 Schoolcraft Road from public lands to rezoning from public lands to R1 single-family residential.
There's support?
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Dorchevitz and supported by Commissioner Pop. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, you have our recommendation. It'll be going to the Board of Trustees. I think, do you have another hearing, Bob? Is there another
Sorry?
hearing before the Board of Trustees for rezoning?
Yeah, there would be.
Yeah.
But, well, I don't want to speak for them, but I don't see any. The next meeting's December 10th. I don't know if there's time for, how much, do they need 30 days?
I don't need 30 days. I'm not sure what the deadline is. I don't know the deadline for that meeting for the Board of Trustees meeting off the top of my head.
Yeah.
You can sign up to, on the township website, you can sign up for getting a notification when the agendas and minutes are posted for not only the Board of Trustees, but this commission and any other meetings that are held in public, which are most of them. So you could do that, or
Sorry.
call, excuse me.
Yeah, or call the supervisor's office tomorrow and see if you can find out what the timing would be for getting it on, if it's possible to get it on the agenda on December 10th.
That's just what I was going to say. According to the zoning ordinance, upon receipt of the planning commission's recommendation, the board can act. So there is no time period that's required.
Okay, so we just need to get it on the agenda.
Yes.
So hopefully it can be on that December
Thank you.
10th agenda.
It does need to go, yeah, hopefully it can, we'll see if it can be brought to that agenda.
This is, so you know, this is Kevin Bennett, who's the township attorney. Okay? Well, good luck to you. Yeah. Okay. Next is item 7 from Novi Fence. Want to put up a fence at the bank on Ann Arbor Road, and if the secretary will please read the report.
Yes, so this following application is for a fence in the OS Arc District at 9430 Sheldon Road. The applicant is proposing to install a 6-foot privacy fence along their property line, which would separate their parking lot from the adjacent building's parking lot. The proposed fence is 6 feet in height. The zoning ordinance does not permit fences above 4 feet in height in the OS Arc District, but it does allow the Planning Commission to waive that requirement if they see a need for it, or they think that it upholds the intentions of the zoning ordinance for that district. We don't see any reason that it directly goes against the intentions of the zoning ordinance, because it isn't separating a parking lot access or and it won't be too visible from the road. However, we do not know the reasoning, and the applicant should be here today if they'd like to speak to it or answer any questions from the Planning Commission.
Okay,
Yeah.
so is the applicant here? It's Novi Fence, I believe.
Hello.
Hi.
Brian Kukuski with President of Novi Fence. We did the fence for the adjacent property at 9440. Applied for the permit, got the permit approved, and then we were going to do the exact same thing on that. There's a dumpster dead center in that, and those residents, their neighbors, I guess, don't upkeep that property at all. So I have pictures in it. Anyways, there's a dumpster in the dead center. They just wanted to run that fence down that property line, return to the back corner of the fence, or back corner of the building. The wall itself is 6 foot, the dumpster is 6 foot, the back neighbors have 6-foot fences. The other side of the parking lot has 6-foot fences. We're just trying to, I guess, mirror the image on both sides of that parking lot. It's the same parking lot that they're using. And they're simply dividing that, not dividing, but just going down the property line of that right side. And like I said, the dumpster's dead center, and they're gonna block that off so they don't see the dumpster. And the high grass and garbage that's around the dumpster area. They're just trying to keep it clean, I guess, for that parking lot.
Any questions from the commission? Okay, well, what's your pleasure? Anyone want to make a motion?
That's what I was wondering.
Yes,
Oh, okay.
I'll make a motion that we approve the fence variance at 9430 Sheldon Road. Do I need a case number? PC 2542.
Yeah, that's good. Is there support?
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Pop and supported by Commissioner Boyd to approve the fence height for application 2542. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you. Next is application 2529, Virginia Tile, on the final site plan. Planners can read the report.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to stick to a pretty high-level overview since we've already approved a lot of it through the tentative site plan review. Just for a quick refresher, this is for the Virginia Tile showroom and warehouse. It is going to be a little over 83,000 square feet. It'll be a design showroom, warehouse, office space, and parking lot. It's 9.74 approximately acres, and it is split zoned both office service and technology and research districts. For the final site plan approval here, the items that we need to discuss mainly are for the site appearance and the building design and architecture. So in the site appearance and coordination section, the comments that we have are regarding the maximum building height. This was also brought up at the tentative site plan review. Because of the split zoning, one district has a maximum height of 30 feet, the other 35. The applicant's proposing 32. They are going to choose to seek a variance for that building height, so any approval tonight would be conditional on a future variance needed. Next, I do want to make the comment that they were granted permission to utilize banked parking for the amount of parking that they have back in August. And then in terms of building design and architecture, per section 28.14, facades must feature at least 75% masonry. The final drawings as submitted show approximately 25% of the facade material as masonry. Obviously, final building design approval is subject to your findings that the proposed building design and palette are harmonious with the surrounding area and other buildings and offices and warehouses. We do believe that it is consistent with other warehouses and offices, so planning does not have an issue. But we would need that waiver from you all. Also, as a last comment, this project will require a land combination as a condition that will be, they've already started the process that's going to be finalized administratively and after the approvals here tonight.
Okay, thank you. And we have a report from the engineer.
Engineering is recommending approval as well. There was a couple things that we were looking at as far as sanitary sewer extension, which they've agreed to bring that from 4600 Schoolcraft all the way up to the property line. There were some items that they needed to address from a stormwater perspective. There was some flooding in Schoolcraft Road. So they've agreed to provide 23% more than what Wayne County stormwater requirements provide for. And that has already been approved by Wayne County. Water already exists on the site, and from a traffic perspective, there's 6,400 cars on that 4-lane highway, so more than enough.
Okay, thank you. And the applicant has received communication from the fire department. They have found no deficiencies in the plan from a public safety perspective. And is the applicant here? Yeah. Okay, you can come up and it's your opportunity to make any comments, answer questions.
Good evening, John Schwartz, Brevard Construction, representing the Virginia Tile Project. Representative of what you've already mentioned today, the final site plan approval has, as stated, already been recommended for approval by both parties. Even yet today, had further approval from the Wayne County side, and that was passed along. So I think that was received by all parties. I believe we're just here to stamp this and move this forward. I don't think there's anything additional that we're offering to change or do divergent from what's already been submitted.
Are there questions from the commission?
I have one. If we could go on the final site plan to page A7, it's almost at the end of that deck. I just want to make sure everybody realizes what the southern elevation along Haggerty is going to look like. Yeah, I'm sorry, right, it's not Haggerty, it's Schoolcraft.
Schoolcraft.
Yeah, thank you. In looking at these plans, I thought that the showroom was gonna be facing.
Which page, Tim?
A7. It's almost at the end. I thought that the main part of the showroom was gonna be facing Schoolcraft, but it actually appears to me that it faces east, more toward the ramp from M14 to 275. That just means that the south part of the building is kind of plain, facing Haggerty Road, or I'm sorry, Schoolcraft Road. And I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that.
There's a lot of funny stuff.
If you can go almost all the way to the end.
If you go back to the page, it'll be the architectural plans on the previous webpage, the Plymouth Township webpage, the last tab. The architectural plans.
Computers doing wacky things.
There's a lot of
Actually,
graphics.
just stay right there. That's actually a good one.
That's a good one.
Right there. So if you could just bring that page full screen. Or we can just deal with that. The point is that whole western portion there is the part that faces Schoolcraft, if I'm interpreting this correctly. So it's a relatively plain appearance. Just want to make sure everybody's aware of that. That's the view from the northeast, which actually is the entrance ramp from 275 to M14. Can you go back, Bob, to the images you just had up? Yeah, that one right there. Let me just show you what I'm talking about. So this area right here is the portion that faces Schoolcraft. And this actually wraps around the corner and faces east. That's the showroom portion. So I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that. And am I interpreting that correctly in the plans?
Go ahead.
Yeah. I'm Doug Nietzsche, I'm the architect for the project. What you're seeing there is the south elevation. On the right is the office portion that seems to be cut off. I think we're kind of zoomed in on this view. What we've done on that, you'll see some vertical stripes. The lower part is masonry, the upper part is metal panels, and we're using two different colors of metal panels. Actually, this rendering is kind of old, and we've enhanced it a little bit, making those vertical accent lines much larger. So we've delineated that wall with color and windows and masonry. You know, that's about a 300-foot long warehouse portion, and there you go, now you can see the rest of the office. The office portion is about 65 feet. So we're trying to put the emphasis on the office. Obviously, in this building, the entrance is around at the northeast corner of the building. So that's the reason for that little wing wall sticking out, is to define the entrance from people pulling in the driveway. The vertical elements that are on the warehouse portion, the color of those vertical elements, do they match the office part or the showroom part? It'll match the masonry and the office part, yes. There's really three, it's a monochromatic building, all of the colors will be kind of a earth tone color, but there's three hues of that earth tone color. The light metal, the dark masonry, and then those stripes will match the masonry.
Bob, I think if you can scroll toward the end of that deck, and we can find that page A7, you'll see that updated treatment of the side. Just go almost all the way to the end of the presentation. See along here, that's the updated, you see how those are wider? Boy, that computer is slow, isn't it?
That's ASP 1.
I saw, while he's looking for it, I saw some elements on the metal portion of that building. Are those windows or what is that?
So, yeah, there you go.
There it is,
Yeah.
right there.
That's A.
Yes, to answer your question, those are windows, those are high wall windows within the metal panel system along the warehouse frontage on both sides.
Could they be made larger, or is there something that prevents that, or?
They could, those windows are 16 feet wide, so they're, and about 6 feet high, so they're very large windows.
I'm just trying to think of something that might break up that.
Let me show you the
mass.
latest drawing.
They're sized appropriate for what they need within the facility, and then we believe that they break up the outside of the facade of the building. Again, much like the buildings that are across the street and down the street, we think that they maintain the need for breakup within the system.
Oh, I see.
help.
Yeah.
No, that does help.
Yeah, it really,
Yeah.
this is a coordination with some.
Can you show?
You can see the red
Wonder why
marks
the
where
one
that's
up
the
there's
change.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Refining.
And then these folks down here.
Thank you.
Yeah, and these folks over here. these are-
What he's showing us is also what's in this deck that we got.
So we made the stripes wider and put the windows in the black rather than in the light.
Yeah.
That breaks it up. So is that in the final plan that we have right now?
Yeah, it's right here on this,
And that's the one we're
the
approving.
one he's
Yeah,
got right
that's-
there.
that's
It's just
the
like this.
Yeah, that image up there is
Oh,
outdated.
that's an old one, the one on the plans.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it appears to be.
Any other comments from the commission on this? No. Did you have anything else?
No.
Anyone else?
Could he just summarize what he just presented to the board?
I can summarize. The vertical striations on the exterior of the wall panels of the warehouse here are just gonna be widened, the width from a standard single panel to maybe a double panel, so giving a larger striation throughout the building. It's a color element that'll give you a visual breakup, which is what the request is per the municipal requirements.
Thank you.
And also, what he described matches what we got in our blueprints over the weekend. So it's the same.
It does help break up the mass of that warehouse portion. Okay, are we ready for a motion?
I move that we approve the final site approval for Virginia Tile, PC number 2529.
Any conditions?
Yeah.
There's a couple conditions
Yeah,
on
there-
page 9.
You could just say conditions as noted in the planner's report.
Yeah, conditions as noted in the planning report. There's three specific items.
Is there support?
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Poppins, supported by Commissioner Dorchevitz to grant final site plan approval to Virginia Tile application 2529. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is application 2539, the St. Kenneth Multipurpose Building. They're here for tentative and for final. So, planner, please read the report.
Yes, so this is an application for tentative and final site plan consideration from St. Kenneth Catholic Church, property located at 14951 North Haggerty Road. The applicant is proposing a new 1.5-story, 5,000 square foot multipurpose building to be used as an accessory meeting and event space for the existing St. Kenneth Catholic Church. The building will include 2 meeting rooms and a large multi-use room and restroom and storage facilities. They also include a covered porch and a meditation garden in the rear. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing St. Kenneth Church Youth Center, which is in approximately 700 square foot converted single-family home. The property is a total of 9.6 acres. The approximate area of the proposed addition is shown. This property was recently combined with the property that the youth center was located on. So now they're a contained site and they're proposing an official accessory use to the existing building. I will very briefly go through the site plan review and focus on aspects that are need to be addressed during as part of site plan approval. The zoning and use is appropriate for this district. It is an accessory use to an existing special use, which is a religious use, but no new special land use is required as this is an accessory. These buildings are permitted to exceed the maximum building height, but this one does not. There are requirements for vehicle access and screening when adjacent to single-family residences. They comply with all dimensional requirements of the site, including the minimum setbacks in the front, side, and the maximum lot coverage percentage on the site is 25%, and the total proposed lot coverage will be 11.8%. There are some minor concerns regarding the preservation of site features. There are some trees being removed on this site, and the replacement trees proposed don't quite meet the requirements for replacement trees based on the list that was provided. We recommend a few additional opportunities for replacement trees later on in our report. We defer to the township engineer for any questions of impacts on public services, but we don't believe that they didn't provide any concerns about public service access to the site. For vehicle access, one of the recommendations we have for approval is to request truck turning diagrams prior to going to the building department, but we think that can be considered administratively. They're not making any major changes to the pavement on the site. They're just providing a slight extension of a driveway. The proposed will provide additional pedestrian access and improve circulation around the site. It'll provide ample walkways from the church and the parking lot, and it provides 2 additional ADA accessible parking spaces directly next to the site and ramp access for those. So there's improved pedestrian and wheelchair access on the site with these improvements. The fire report found no concerns regarding emergency access or hazard vulnerability. There were some additional items of landscaping that we recommend before final site plan as an administrative approval. They provide sufficient screening from adjacent single-family uses. However, there is additional parking lot landscaping required for the zoning ordinance that could be provided in front of the parking lot to shield from Haggerty Road. We recommend some either a bioswale or decorative grasses that might provide a natural continuation of the landscaping or the topography on the site. And there are some additional trees that could be required, but there's many opportunities on locations on the site that provide opportunities, including locations where they are already providing shade trees, there may be room. So, but the applicant is here and they can speak to if there's any alternatives they'd like to propose. In terms of parking and loading, no additional parking is required. The use already has 36 additional parking spaces than they are already required to have. And this building is proposed to be used for existing users of the church, so it shouldn't increase uses of the site or visitors to the site. The other note is the building design and architecture. The building design standards require a percentage of the buildings to be masonry. The building is designed in a way to sort of bridge the gap between the adjacent single-family uses and the church next door. So it's kind of it is an institutional building, but it's meant to look like a residential building, and residential buildings don't have design standards in this district. Ultimately, it's up to the Planning Commission to discuss if they believe that the proposed design of the building is sufficient with the surrounding environment, or is harmonious with the surrounding environment. There were also some lighting concerns that we had. The overall average lighting on the site is within the maximum. There are just a couple of individual spots that may need to be reduced, but could be done with just a couple of replacements. So ultimately, our recommendation is approval with the 4 items that are listed on the final page of our report, with modifying some of the landscaping and demonstrating that all required replacement trees are provided, offering truck turning diagrams, having a determination on the facade requirement, and that lighting is provided, or modified lighting is provided. All right.
Okay, thank you. And the engineering report?
From an engineering perspective, it's fairly straightforward. There's already an existing water main on site. There's already an existing sewer on site. There's 2 new services that are going to be provided to the building. They have some in-kind storm sewer replacement, but they're not adding any additional detention as a part of this, which we don't believe is going to be triggered because you need an acre of disturbance or a half acre of new pavement to meet those requirements.
Okay.
So we've obviously recommended approval.
Okay, thank you. And as mentioned by the planner, the fire department has no objections. I found no deficiencies as submitted. Is the applicant here?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Brad Nielsen. I'm chairman of the Stewardship and Building Committee at St. Kenneth Church. I'm joined tonight by Stan Cole, Kayla Mortellaro, and from Newman Smith Architecture, and the esteemed Father Belsack. Couple of things I'd like to address. First is the trees. We have, since the review comments, identified those trees. The locusts are black locusts. The maple is a silver maple. And the elm is an American elm, none of which are heritage trees that we had shown on the plan. It's just locust. As far as the site work, we're not doing any site modifications to the existing parking lot. We are replacing, there are parking spaces now right near that building. We are simply making them ADA accessible, adding the ramp, replacing in kind there. Site lighting, I think there was some confusion on the site lighting. As the notes were on the photometrics, that there were a couple spots that were well over the 10-foot candle, but in accordance with the ordinance, we were required to provide an overall site lighting plan at 0 inches above finished grade, but also a 5-foot above finished grade plan for the perimeter and at any setback line. I think what was looked at in the engineering review was they looked at the 5-foot above finished grade plan, which made the front porch light at 20-foot candles because it was a mere 2 foot below where the fixture was mounted. So we did provide both to comply with the ordinance and the requirements. And if there's any other questions, I think that was all that you had on.
So what is the house that is going to be demolished? Is it this right here?
It's in.
Yep, if you can zoom in, yes, it's just, yep,
hidden
right
behind that
there.
tree.
And I want to note, it's not used as a single-family home at this point. It's just
Yeah.
it's a converted single-family home.
Yeah, I read that, but I wasn't sure what.
And Father Tom can speak to the history of that house and what it was used for previously and their initial acquisition.
Anyway, we can get into that a bit later. So you've had an opportunity to look at this report, including the underlined items that we haven't discussed here, but they're minor, like when you demo the house, the driveway will be removed.
Correct.
Okay.
And I had preliminary discussions with Laura long before I even started the project, and she suggested originally we were going to use it, and then she had suggested that perhaps we not use that as an additional means of ingress, egress to the church property. So yes, we are going to abandon that driveway, and the plan should show that,
And
the
then,
current plans.
Bob, do you have the rendering? Is that in there that we received in our packet, of what this looks like, so we can look at the architectural design of it?
Some of the site plans that we received for this application were too large to be, we're still making sure that they get posted on the website, but, so there are some plans that we're discussing tonight that were available at the township offices, but were not available to view online because of the size.
We don't have them on the website.
So they might not be available to
Okay.
share.
Yeah. So, and I'll ask them to turn this around so that the public can see them as well. But does the commission have any concerns or comments about this, particularly the masonry requirement? Because they don't meet the masonry requirement.
So it's like 75% cement,
Right.
25% fiber?
Yeah, of course, I'm a big brick guy myself, but, you know, this is the style that we're seeing more and more, where they're using what commonly is called hardy board. So we're seeing that,
Hardy
you know, it's a
siding.
pretty,
Which it is a cementous type, you know, it's not your vinyl siding like you might have seen. It is hardy board.
good and hardy. So, any concerns from the commission on this?
Can we talk about the trees for just a minute? Sure.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I think we're at that point.
So if I understood what you said, the planner's report calls out 364 inches of heritage trees. And what you're saying is really those are not heritage trees at all, they're.
Correct, which we have corrected. In planning in their review, we had them listed as elms, locusts, maples. We've now identified them as black locust, which is not protected, and American maples, or silver maple, and American elm.
So will you go and recalculate this chart to make sure we get the right number of diameter breast height inches?
Yes, and your approval can, just say, under condition that the correct number of, or that the appropriate number of heritage tree replacement is, if there is a corrected number, we can identify the corrected number, make sure that every single one of those trees that we had as heritage trees are taken into account. If there are additional trees still left over, we can also,
Clearly, when you make that correction, there'll be a lot less tree requirement. The question is, will it meet the 110-inch requirement, or will it be short? And if it's short,
Right.
we need to make up the difference.
right, and that is something that we have done with other applications, you know, we can confirm with the applicant that those get allocated on the site somewhere.
I guess my question was already asked at the podium, but there, in my interpretation, when I was looking at the prints and, you know, between all the prints we looked at since Saturday evening and my job, there's some of these are sort of flowing together, but I don't think there was any new parking lot involved in the church, correct? Or in this building. It was, in fact, you're eliminating one of the driveways. Where are you requesting more street coverage or a screening to be done? 'Cause when I drove by there or into the parking lot, I didn't see actually any need to see it. You can't see Haggerty Road from inside the parking lot. So
If we could see the elevations again, or the specific, actually, they're right here. The driveway that drives up to the proposed garage door, as well as part of that drive that connects in front of or connects that driveway to the parking lot, there is a slight extension of the parking that's provided right now, and there's some repaving. And with the repaving and restriping, we require additional parking lot landscaping. Yeah.
And while that is being done mostly for accessibility, as I said, there are parking spaces that exist right now. We're replacing them in kind with ADA accessible spaces and ramp. That's what we're doing there. And another on the parking issue, the planner had brought up truck turning. And we are not affecting in any way our current dumpster enclosure, that parking lot, ingress, egress, and that has been there. It was not an issue when we renovated the church, and that dumpster enclosure in that area and that whole parking lot has been like that for 20-odd years. So if it is required, we'll be glad to provide it, but seems unnecessary as we're not doing site work in the actual parking lot or affecting that dumpster enclosure.
I did look at the drawing, I could see what you're talking about. I don't have a visual of it, of course, right now, but I have an overview of it, so.
And I also wanted to note that in addition to visual screening, the landscaping provides like a protective barrier to pedestrians that are walking on the street. If there's a flat grade, we try to create as much barrier as possible between any drive vehicle areas and walking areas.
Gotcha.
And while we designed this building with a garage on the front, the goal there was to, again, be harmonious with existing residential and also a bridge between residential to the south and the, more commercial looking church. There won't be anybody living in this building. The garage was there as designed. Will there, maybe we'll store, Christmas decorations in there or something of that nature, but it won't be used as a, driveway with cars coming in and parking in the garage.
There's a garage on the south side also, correct?
Correct.
A garage door.
Other questions or concerns from the commission? Well, you said the magic word, the history of the previous, or the house that's currently there, and so I'm also a member of the historical commission. So perhaps you can just give us, either you or Father.
Father, I think, would probably be best served to give us a narrative on the history of what we call Becky's house.
Yeah. It's not a homily, so make it short.
So it'll be brief.
Yeah, it'll be brief as opposed to what I do on Sunday. No, my name is Tom Belzak. I'm the pastor at St. Kenneth. I'm pleased to be with you this evening. I've been at St. Kenneth for 20 years, and 20 years ago when I entered the parish in February of 2004, the resident in that White House, her name was Esther Gordon. And Esther Gordon had been approached by my predecessor, Father Jomalia, and he always kept saying to Esther, Esther, if you ever want to sell your house, give us the first dib on buying it from you. So probably about 2 years, probably 2006, Esther came into the office complex. She said, I want to sell my house. And Father Malia said, you'd buy it from me. So I said, well, yeah, we'd like to buy it just because it gives us a little more property. I think it's almost 3/4 of an acre that we added to our property. And so we were able to negotiate a purchase price for her, and we paid her for her house. And then at that point, we didn't have really a need for the house, but it was an additional piece of property. And it had a structure on it, and we had a group of parents that wanted to create a quote unquote a youth center. So we decided that if they would be willing to sand the floors and put some paint on the walls, we would turn this residence into a youth center, which we used for probably about 10 years. And then the person that was running our youth group took another job, and it kind of fell apart, and it's basically been vacant for probably the last 15 years at most. We really would just like to have it's a tear down. If you looked at it pretty closely, it's basically a tear down, and we would like to have some additional storage and a couple of new meeting rooms for perhaps a renovation of a youth group or some other activities. And then we have a group of ladies that come on Thursday morning that we call them the Holy Stitchers. They spend about 3 hours crocheting and knitting and doing things, lap robes for people in hospitals and baby bonnets for newborns. They need a dedicated space. So we're hoping that if we can build this structure, we can give them a place that they can meet and have other meetings take place there as well.
Sounds very good. Any other questions from Father while he's up there?
Kind of hard to object to.
Hard to object to. That's why I wear my collar. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And that's really about the shortest time we have.
Oh, okay. And Father, I want you to give my best to Bob Owens.
I will do that.
Okay.
I will do that.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, I move to approve application number 2539 for St. Kenneth's multipurpose building, site plan tentative and final review approval, subject to the following conditions. Number one, a modified landscaping plan is provided and demonstrates sufficient trees to replace heritage trees removed from the site. Additional screening will be provided to screen the driveway and parking areas from the right-of-way. Number two, truck turning diagrams are provided and the site has sufficient turning room for waste removal vehicles. Number three, the requested waiver to the 75% masonry facade is hereby found acceptable by the Planning Commission. Number four, a modified exterior lighting plan is provided which reduces the maximum intensity of lighting on the site.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Dorchevitz and supported by Commissioner Barberina to grant tentative and final site plan approval to the St. Kenneth multipurpose building, 2539, subject to said conditions. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations. Good luck.
Good luck.
Okay, next is application 2459, the Plymouth Exchange. Planner, please read the report.
All right, so Plymouth Exchange, this project is at the southeast corner of 5 Mile and Napier. The site is a little over 186 acres. What we're seeking tonight is amendment to a previous approval that had been given. The obvious largest change is there used to be 3 buildings that were proposed. It's now been reduced to one larger building, one larger warehouse, which totals 715,000 square feet. Again, that's on 186 acres. The applicant is only proposing to develop a little over 60 of the acres on that site, and the remainder will be preserved as wetland area as it contains both unregulated and regulated wetlands. The zoning is compliant. It's in the industrial district. Regarding the site appearance and coordination, all the dimensional requirements, that complies. The location of the building is in the northwest portion of the site, and it's located there to minimize disturbance to the wetlands. It's worth noting that the variances that were filed and approved by the ZBA are no longer necessary. With this new site design, there used to be variances needed for side yard setbacks. That's no longer applicable. No variances would be needed for this new site design. Preservation of site features, everything complies regarding trees and wetlands. Obviously, encroachment into any of the wetlands or floodways is prohibited, but again, the bulk of the project will be in the northwest corner of the site. About 24% or just under 24% of the site will be covered by impervious surface. The site plan does include sufficient green space, though, to buffer the impervious surface with the regulated wetlands. But all of that complies. Pedestrian access and circulation, this is a matter for discussion. There is no sidewalk along the public street frontage at 5 Mile, which is a requirement. The pathway must be provided a minimum width of 8 feet to match other developments in the corridor. In speaking to the applicant and reviewing this project as a whole, we believe that perhaps the requirement of the 8-foot pathway along 5 Mile would be difficult for the size of the walkway, and as well as crossing the Johnson Creek Drain and woodlands, where no development is proposed to be located. And so it is planning suggestion that perhaps payment in lieu might be appropriate in this instance. That way, those funds could be used elsewhere for connectivity in the township, but that is an item for discussion here tonight. In regard to parking, this is another item up for discussion. The parking calculations, the parking that would be required is, in our opinion, excessive. The site provides for 171 employee parking spaces, 183 trailer parking spaces, totaling 354 spaces, 6 of which are barrier-free. That is quite a substantial reduction from the required minimum, although, again, it is planning's opinion, as well as the applicant's, that that parking minimum is excessive, and we do believe that the parking that is proposed is sufficient for the use and size of the building. Regarding loading spaces, there is not designated loading spaces that were included in the plan, but with the 183 trailer parking spaces, we believe that that design satisfies the requirements for the loading spaces. Regarding building design and architecture, masonry standards were already approved previously, but The massing has changed for those. So overall design and the massing requirements are something that should be discussed tonight. And also really exterior lighting now complies. We were provided with, the applicant provided to us in writing that there were some issues with some of the lighting being too bright. That's no longer an outstanding item. The applicant has agreed to amend that anywhere where lighting was too intense. There are, really quickly to go back to parking, just a note that there is no banked parking provided on the plan today. However, there's ample space for parking to be added in the future if that's necessary, and any additional parking would have to come before the Planning Commission. Additionally, as you were provided with the supplement tonight, the fire department has also approved this amended site plan.
That's it?
That's it, yep.
And the engineering report?
All right, from a utility perspective, there is not water and sewer in front of the site, but there are plans to develop both. So right now, MITC has a sewer project that they are replacing the sewer along 5 Mile east of Ridge up to that transmission, up to the Watua line. They're gonna extend that all the way past Ridge to the west, underneath the railroads and underneath Johnson Creek, and they're gonna set a valve vault there. From there, the developer is leading a public water and a private sewer project that'll extend from the valve vault all the way up to their site. So sewer will be provided essentially from the site all the way to the Watua outlet. From a water main perspective, water main exists on Ridge Road up to 5 Mile. This project is gonna include the extension of that water main west of Ridge Road, underneath the railroad track, underneath the creek, all the way up to a water tank. That water tank is gonna become a public water tank, and that's gonna actually operate as a regional tank for the area, for the entire MITC region. And that is being developed and constructed by the developer as well. From a traffic perspective, it's a 2-lane road now, but there are plans for that to be expanded to a 3rd lane. That's a second phase that MITC has taken on to look for funding. They've already funded the portion of Ridge Road and then the portion 5 Mile up to Beck. But the second phase of that has already been designed, and they're working through the funding for that now. But from a traffic study perspective, that was all addressed as a part of MITC traffic study. And then we've had all of the subsequent developments add these developments into their studies as well.
But is this water tank an elevated water tank, or?
No, it's just a ground storage tank.
Oh, just a ground storage
Not
tank?
Not an elevated water tank, correct.
And so
That's been in the township's long-term capital plans for probably 20, 30 years.
So the property that that tank sits on, is that being deeded over to the township?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Any questions from the engineer? Okay, and
The private sewage system, how's that gonna work?
So it's because it sits lower in elevation, it's actually a grinder pump system and a force main. That force main goes up to that valve vault, and from the valve vault continues via force main up to the gravity just past the railroad. Once it gets past the railroad, then it travels gravity to the Watua sewer outlet.
Okay, so it still connects to the broader sewage.
It does, and it actually attaches to the Northville side as well. So we've actually worked with Northville Township to identify the sizing of the grinder pumps to make sure that we're not competing with them from a pressure perspective.
any other questions? Okay, and the applicants received a communication from the fire department. They have no objections from a public safety perspective, and the applicant is here.
Good evening. My name is Cam Cooper. First off, I thank you for the opportunity to be here. It's hard to believe it's almost been 2 years since I was last in front of you. Time goes by fast. But I did want to take, since it's been a while since I was last up here, I want to take a few minutes to kind of reintroduce myself. There's some new faces here, who we are, why we're here, also what has transpired from our perspective in the last 2 years. And then there were some engineering, handful of comments, 3 or 4 that I want to address as well.
Yeah, if you could include in your comments, and maybe you've already thought this through, but if, when you give us a little bit of a history as part of that.
Yeah,
You know, where
absolutely.
you were and,
Yep.
you know, what the new.
Why we changed site
thoughts.
plans?
Right,
Yeah.
okay, great.
Yep, so again, Cameron Cooper Jones Development Company, we are an based industrial firm based in Kansas City. We're actually celebrating our 30th year of business, which is something we're really excited and proud of. We have done over 225 projects across the U.S. I think we're up to like 39 states now, so pretty diverse national footprint. And a little bit of, if we rewind 2 years ago, so we were here with a 3-building footprint. We had a larger cross-dock building and 2 small rear-load buildings. And so when we were here 2 years ago, we submitted, obviously worked through the process, got full planning approval through that. But there were a few variances that we had to work through. So we went through zoning board of approval. 2 of note, there was a setback variance on Napier. And then there was also setback variance on 5 Mile Road. And so we went through that, got zoning unanimously approved through the Planning Commission as well as the Zoning Board of Approval. And so rewind 2 years ago, we had full approval to move full steam ahead on 3-building development. And then unfortunately, as fortune happens, I'm sure you're aware and probably even impacted by some of this, the industrial development world has been extremely choppy. So we've hit some headwinds as far as construction funding, interest rates. And so since this is a spec development, we decided to hit pause on this development until about 3 months ago when we picked up. But through this process, we've gotten market feedback on our 3-building site plan. We've also received feedback from future tenants as far as overall layout. And with that information and that additional feedback, we decided to pivot 3 months ago, and we have changed to a 1-building layout. It's a little bit cleaner, provides a little bit easier flow through our development. So we are proposing tonight for final building plan approval, a 715,000 square foot cross-dock facility. And it's really twofold. So first off, we are reducing the overall building square footage by 30% from a development standpoint, so big deal for us. But one of the major benefits is when we move the building south and further east, we no longer need the variance along Napier. So what we're currently proposing, the tree lines along Napier will not be impacted by this development. And so our new development moving forward will have no impact to the tree line along Napier. And likewise, along 5 Mile, we also will not require a variance, and we're going to keep as many trees along 5 Mile as possible. So that's kind of the genesis of how we got to where we are today. Before I go through planning comments, do you guys have any questions for us over why we're here and how we got here over the last 24 months?
So you would own the warehouse and lease out space to tenants, but you would remain the owner?
So our business model is both. We hold some and then we also sell some. So along with interest rates and capital markets world, it's been extremely choppy. So again, part of the reason with this being a speculative development and not a build to suit, so we didn't have a tenant when we started construction, or if we were to 2 years ago. And so that was part of the genesis on why we decided to hit pause until 3 months ago.
Would this be a single tenant or multiple or?
Yeah, that's a great question. Right now, we don't know the answer to that, and that's part of, and we can good segue into parking. So the way that we do parking on a spec development, we don't know if a future tenant will have 5 employees or 500 employees. So we, based off our experience in doing 200 plus industrial projects across the US, we take our best guess at it. So this 175 that we've proposed for this building is kind of our best guess on where parking would be. When we meet with most jurisdictions, the worst thing that we can do is provide an empty parking lot. If they have 5 employees and we have 500 stalls, that's not beneficial for the township. Usually you guys like to have more green space as opposed to empty parking lots. So that's the part of the reason why we propose the auto parking that we have. However, if there is a tenant that needs additional parking, we would put together a tenant improvement package that would include all of the improvements inside the building as well as exterior improvements, and that would come back through the planning department for approval.
Can you share with us what kind of tenants you're marketing this to?
Yeah, another great question. So we've done projects for Amazon, DHL, FedEx, kind of across the country, dry distribution. But I think for this facility, it's uniquely positioned to have some manufacturing. We've responded to a handful of RFPs. Nothing has taken off, but I think there's a unique flex kind of supplier manufacturing potential tenants that we will chase.
So the building will just be a big, giant open space, and then it's up to the tenant to finish it?
That's a great question. So when we do a spec building, we don't do any office space because we don't know what the future tenant will need. We don't know if they need 2,000 square feet of office or 50,000 square feet. So what we do is we provide a warm lit shell. So it will be a shell construction, all dock doors installed, dock equipment, lights in the warehouse, and it will be a heated facility with all fire protection in place. So it's kind of essentially a blank slate for tenants to come, and that way we can position our space and market it as much flexibility within the warehouse as possible.
So one tenant could rent the
Hopefully,
whole
I mean, that's
thing?
ideal. We would love to have a 715,000 square foot tenant. The reality is we're kind of setting it up in quadrants. So you could demise the space if you had to, but yes, I mean, that's ideal that you would have one tenant.
Other questions or concerns? Okay. So you have more to this presentation?
Yeah, so there were 3 comments that I wanted to, well, one of them being parking. The first one was a site photometric. So that's a non-issue. We're working through that now. Whatever your guys' site lighting requirements are, we'll make sure that we meet that. And so that submittal will be submitted by end of this week. So that item's gonna go away. There was a request for a sidewalk along 5 Mile Road. And as you can see on the Google Earth, so I'm certainly open to providing sidewalk. However, there are some significant wetlands along the eastern portion of our site. So it's a 190-acre site. Roughly 100 is wetlands. And so on the east side and the south side. So nobody wants a sidewalk through wetland. We don't want to get Eagle involved, go through permitting for a sidewalk. So we just need clarification on exactly what the township is looking for there. And we're open to making sure that you guys are happy as far as sidewalk. And then the other item brought up was building facade. So this is exactly the same. We submitted elevations in the drawing. We have some renderings as well, so you guys could see what building will look like. But same building facade we submitted that was previously approved. It will be concrete tilt panel with in each of the storefronts in either corner, the northwest and the northeast corner will have 2 rows of glass and glazing. And yeah, so the elevations are provided in there.
Bob, is that in the packet, these elevations? And not in the packet, but on the website?
And as far as color scheme goes, it's the exact same color scheme that we submitted 2 years ago. It's a pretty neutral color scheme. It has, yeah, if you could pass it up, great. Combination of light and dark gray.
Oh, it's a little different. Thank you. So the one question I had when I looked at the elevations, you have that one corner, with a lot of glass.
Yep.
So is this going to be a single entry? Is that more like for pedestrians? What's the purpose of that, or does it exist on all 4 corners, or?
Yeah, another great question. So with this being a spec development, we don't know where the tenant will want office locations. So again, we're providing as much flexibility as possible. So we have a storefront or an office entry in the northeast and the northwest corner.
Okay.
With storefront provided. Typically, tenants will move into each one of those spaces, and we'll create an office portion pod in each one of those corners.
Oh, so that's why you said it's like split up into potentially 4.
More than likely, we'll demise, we won't chop up the building because we want to maintain the dock integrity.
Right.
But we have actual storefronts going in the northwest, northeast, and we have knockouts for the southwest and the southeast to provide flexibility. So if a tenant does want to move on the south side, we can knock out those panels and provide glass.
Right.
So that way they can get some natural light through their future office area.
It's a lot better than it was.
We're trying. In complete, the past site plan was not, there wasn't anything wrong with it. It was just a little congested, and that was the feedback that we got. And we wanted to make sure, again, for the benefit of the township, neighbors on Napier, part of the reason that we decided to move back and maintain the existing tree line as well.
Well, that's a good segue about congestion, because there was a lot of public interest in this, when you were first here a couple of years ago.
Yep.
And I'm not sure why what these people here are interested in one particular application, and it's not a public comment meeting, but I'll solicit public comments. If anyone is here that has an interest in here, they'll give you 3 minutes to hear you out. So is there anyone here that wishes to react? Sure, come up, give us your name and.
My name is Jeff Burnham. I am a homeowner that borders that property off Napier Road. I'm in Washtenaw County, so I don't get a lot of the, I can't vote over here. I can't do a whole lot over here, but I always hope that the commission is also considering your neighbors to the west of you. A couple of comments, got 3 minutes. The first thing is I'd like to provide my history of this property and how this has progressed. It has nothing to do with yours, and it won't contradict your history at all. It's more with the planning commission here. We came in 2 years ago. All of the neighbors of the bordering properties, directly bordering properties along Napier, were not notified of public hearing, which is not following due process. We're not following the rules. We're not following the law. And we came in and voiced our opinions that day, where you saw a lot of ruckus and a lot of excited people were here 2 years ago. I met with the township with representation from, I guess it's Dalton and Tomich. And we met with the lawyers, and we met with Supervisor Heiss. And we came to an agreement, said, okay, let's proceed, because the project had kind of been put on hold. Let's see what happens later. Maybe there's not going to be any variance issues or anything else. And the agreement we had was that we would keep in touch, and we would be notified if anything progressed with this project. My disappointment is I have followed up, along with Dalton and Tomich, with Laura Hawes' offices and also the Planning Commission, to say, hey, is anything going on? No, nothing's going on. As little as 6 weeks ago, we reached out again, and we've never been notified of even this meeting. I happened to be at work and looked online to see, is anything going on, and found that this meeting was today and came over here. Very disappointing that the commission isn't keeping their promises and their agreements with the citizens that really are interested in this project. So I've got 1 minute left. I want to talk a little bit about the project itself. Thank you for bringing a project in that suits the neighbors a lot better. It's within the variances. It's within the master plan, at least what I see. As far as the sidewalk goes, yes, the people on Napier Road would love that sidewalk, or 8-foot pathway. It connects us to some of the other bike paths and everything else that are along Ridge Road. So it is helpful if we can keep that. Don't take the money. Please take the sidewalk. Trees, I love to hear that we're going to keep the canopied trees on Napier. It was one of our concerns a couple of years ago, before the project was going to be within 6 feet of the road. Question about, I thought I saw in the paperwork, and again, I couldn't review it perfectly, about another smaller building or a smaller house or something. Was there something in the writing about that? It's only the warehouse, right? Okay. And then, can I have another 30 seconds or so?
Oh, yeah, go on.
Okay. We talked about traffic and everything else and all that, and road improvements. Is there a sequence for the project? Does the road get improved before the project gets built and tenants move in? Kind of like what we're doing on 5 Mile before the Meyer comes in? Is there some sequence there? I'm concerned about that we'll end up with a big project in there, and then we'll be doing road construction when we've got 175 trucks going in and out of that place with a new tenant. And I think that kind of covers everything that I was thinking of. Again, I appreciate the project comes in. We've moved it off of Napier Road. We're not tearing things up. We don't have a building that's within feet of our road.
All right.
And I don't
Well,
have much else to say. But
thanks for coming
mainly
in.
was my disappointment with the communication with this board and Laura Hawes' offices.
Is there anyone else here that wishes to express their opinion or thoughts, concerns? Okay, well, there was no public notice sent out for this particular item because it isn't a public hearing. There was that public
I wasn't
hearing.
expecting that. We had an agreement that we would be contacted directly if there was going to be any kind of advance on this project, and
Yeah,
nobody
I
contacted us.
can't speak to that because none of us here were a part of that discussion that you might have had. So unfortunately, I can't answer that question. You can always sign up for the notifications of our agenda and minutes, not only for the Planning Commission, but the Board of Trustees and other boards that are here, and you'll be notified automatically when those are posted, and you can look at those. You can just look at the agenda, and if, that's a quick, 2-minute read perhaps, and then if you see something that you have an interest in, then you could look in the packet right there, and you'll have the same information that we have. But I do appreciate that, and I know there was a lot of concern 2 years ago, and as I said, this was not a public hearing type of meeting, but I know there was a lot of interest from the citizenry, not only in Plymouth, but our neighbors, so I wanted to give you an opportunity to express your thoughts.
I understand all that. I'm just saying that we had agreements with Heiss, with the township lawyer, with Laura Hall was also in the meeting. So that agreement was made and no communication was made to us, and it should have been.
Good
Easy,
information
like you
to
said,
know.
very simple to write an easy email. There's a lawyer contacting them every six months, asking questions and reminding, please contact us. So that's my only disappointment there.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry about
Just my
that. I
email
mean,
address.
that's all I can say. I, was never a part of it or unaware of it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Please.
thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any comments or concerns from the commission? The applicants are here.
Mr. Chairman, regarding the 8-foot pathway on 5 Mile Road, back when the MITC first came to us about that whole project, I believe that they had planned on having that bicycle connector. There's the Borders to Border Trail. It was going to go up into Northville.
I'm not sure where that was going to be connected. Do you recall?
I
I
don't
think that was
recall.
going up on Ridge because there's a trail that is on the Northville side.
Right, and that would be along the drain rather than along 5 Mile, is my impression.
I can speak to that.
Okay.
So again, to clarify what Ashley said during the review about that pathway, part of so in addition to the fact that there are some wetlands and trees along that side of the road, which would be disturbed, we did also believe that because that trail is being proposed on the north side of the road, that there might be a greater benefit without a sidewalk on the south side of 5 Mile, which would be the other reason why the payment in lieu might be an appropriate alternative to providing that 8-foot pathway.
Is there going to be a sidewalk on 5 Mile on the east side of Ridge? Along here where?
And yeah, I don't believe there would be any connection on either side. It would be it wouldn't be connected on
So it connects to nowhere.
Is there a plan for a sidewalk on the north side of 5 Mile going over to the Northville lumber site?
My understanding was that there was a trail planned along 5 Mile on the north side of the property, north side of 5 Mile. And so that was, so I don't know about the sidewalk, but the paved trail is.
I'm not sure I'd see the need for a sidewalk on both sides of the road if we.
Right,
we
if
knew it
there's
was
a
on the
paved
north
trail
side.
on the north side.
Right, it wouldn't make sense.
Why is the sidewalk 8 feet, not like standard size? Because it's just a busier road or what?
Do you know why it's 8 foot?
The, no, I don't know why the requirement is 8 foot.
The normal sidewalk's what, like 4?
I think the,
5?
like the border to border trails, it's a hiking, biking, or walking, biking, trail is wider.
Yeah, because if you look down like Northville Road or Heinrich
So you don't run
Drive
over
or
the
any of those,
pedestrians.
it's
Yeah,
6 to 8
usually
feet
they're like
wide,
8
yeah.
feet.
Because they
The
want
multi-use
bikes to
path.
pass.
Yeah, a minimum multi-use path for bikes and pedestrians is 8 foot. And then when you get into like TAP grants and things like that, they require 10 foot plus 2 foot shoulder on either side. So this is more of a multi-use path than it would be a sidewalk.
And it's because it's on 5 Mile or what?
It is to, I think that was because it's on a major arterial, that 8 foot pathway is the typical along 5 Mile, if you were to provide a pathway. That's my understanding.
Okay.
If I could make a couple comments. I was on the ZBA when we did the variance on this project, so I remember it well. It was never really reported in the media, but the original plan had almost 60% of this site, actually slightly more than 60% of this site was to remain in its natural state, which is pretty significant. Now, of course, it's wetlands, which means it has to stay in a natural state, but nevertheless, that's good. With this new plan, it's now gonna be 67.5% of the site will remain in its natural state. So that's a significant improvement versus the prior plan. The other comment, to reiterate what the gentleman said, you know, to get the building that they wanted to do on Napier and 5 Mile was probably not ideal, particularly when it comes to the tree line along Napier Road, which was pretty thick and would have probably, a lot of it would be taken down. So with this proposal, the building is, first of all, the building's smaller. Second of all, it's moved significantly to the east. And those tree lines are largely kept intact. So to me, this represents a significant improvement over the plan that we had approved 2 years ago. So I just wanted to add my perspective on that.
Yeah, if I can, I'll jump in there. So the reality is we're already zoned industrial. We're already approved through Planning Commission, Zoning Board of Approval. This is really as an out-of-town developer, we want to win for the township as well as a win for us. And we think that this is a pretty significant compromise. Obviously, 30% less building square footage, which means less rent dollars for us. But again, I think it's truly a win-win for everybody.
I would agree. I'm not sure, in my mind, I'm questioning the need for this sidewalk to begin with, since we're not sure at this point, is there going to be a sidewalk on the north side? So why would we want one on the south side? And there's no sidewalk proposed for the closer to Ridge Road along 5?
No, and I think we've got an overall sidewalk gap plan that we've been working through with the township, and there's not really any long-range plans to go that route. That's why part of the suggestion was to go payment in lieu to, help fund that rather than put a sidewalk that no one's gonna use.
To that point, there are other sidewalk gaps in the township that would get a lot of benefit from being filled in with this money if we could divert it. So I think I would be in favor of the payment in lieu of sidewalk. Because I think it benefits the township as a whole in other areas.
But if we wanted the sidewalk later, what, the township would just pay for it or what?
No, if they don't do a sidewalk, then they have to make a payment in lieu of.
Right.
Into the sidewalk fund, that we utilize to fill gaps out other places in the township. But I mean, a future board could always add a sidewalk, from that fund. But but that would be, you know, if there's any possibility of that, you know, why would you not, you know, not do it now? But if you look at like where some of the sidewalk gaps have been filled in around the township, a lot of the money to pay for that came from payment in lieu of from other projects that were on main roads that didn't need a sidewalk.
Similar to what happened in your neighborhood along North Territorial.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's where a lot of that money came from.
Yep. And Ann Arbor Trail?
Yeah.
They try to fill in the gaps. I would say and correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, but priority, you know, walkways to schools and parks, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. Those I would consider high priority.
In the residential areas.
Exactly. Yeah.
And, you know, we kind of look for continuity. Can you get from point A to point B? You know, even if you have to cross at an intersection or something, can you get there and stay on the sidewalk? That's a key question, particularly like along North Territorial. That was, you know, hazardous to ride a bike if you'd have to, you know, go in and out, go on the street and then on the sidewalk, then on the street, then on the sidewalk. It was not really, not a good situation.
Oh, yeah. I pushed for it for 20 years, and I'm really glad that finally happened, yeah. Yeah, I'm a big sidewalk fan. I think it's great.
So can anyone address the question as to what's the sequence of improving the roadway there on 5 Mile Road? I know Laura sits at those meetings, but I don't know, Jeremy, do you know what the sequence is on 5?
I mean, they're actively seeking funding right now. When it comes to getting through engineering review and, you know, how long it takes to build the building and how long it takes to get a tenant, they're building a speculative building, so it means they don't have a tenant right away. So there's a chance that the road is improved ahead of time. I know MITC is actively going after funding for that, and I think it's one of those chicken and egg type of things where once you have a development there, it's going to be more attractive for funding. It's just timing. So you can't really say whether or not it's going to happen before or not, but I can tell you everyone's actively looking for that funding now.
But the water main and the sewer system, those can be done independently of the 5 Mile widening?
Yes, those are done independently, and that's actually being designed and constructed by this developer. So outside of the MITC section that's already being built right now underneath the drain.
And I can't speak to 5 Mile improvements, but our plan, assuming that we go through here and get approved, our plan is to continue design, submit for building permit, and start moving dirt early next spring. Call it May 1st.
Are there other issues that the commission has, questions? Are we ready for a motion?
I guess the only question I have is how are you going to word it around the sidewalk? Or
Well,
can we make it?
Well, I guess the question is, in my mind, is that you would be putting in the sidewalk in the part that you can't do the whole frontage, where I'm not suggested because of the engineering problems with it. Am I correct?
Yeah, as another data point, so our east entrance, if there's a site plan, our east entrance coming into our development, there is a ground storage tank east of our east entrance. And so there are significant wetlands directly east. So I don't even know how far, as a data point, I don't know how far that sidewalk can actually go from Napier to, certainly can't go to our far east boundary. Just, I would say it's almost just a little bit past the ground storage tank location.
Probably more than half of the site is wetlands, almost all the way up to the
Yeah, I know
roadway.
there's a lot of wetlands.
Yeah.
Well, maybe what we should consider is that we, in the motion, should contain that the question of the sidewalk could be administratively considered, because I don't think we have people here that know what's happening on the north side of 5 Mile. Because if they're going to put one on the north side, and that's their pathway, you know, leading to that pathway, why would we want one on the south side, particularly the issues with that significant wetlands? And that can be done administratively after they get more facts. How's that sound? Otherwise, I think, and we're comfortable with the banked parking. And the photometric plan.
When you look at the site plan, you can see, we don't currently show banked parking for the reasons I
Right,
mentioned earlier.
right.
But if you look on the south side of the building, there's space for auto parking on the south side future, and then there's a lot of space to the west of our building.
Yeah. Which you may or may not need depending on the tenant. Looking at the notes, and you had no other issues with the underlying portions of the report, correct? Okay. All right, well, then I think we're ready for a motion, with the exception of outlining that the sidewalk requirements would be handled administratively.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I move that we grant amended and final site plan approval for the proposed industrial development, PC application number 2459, Plymouth Exchange, and parcel number 78-001-99-001-703, conditional on applicant providing the following: to be reviewed and approved by the administrative committee, a revised photometric plan, and a decision by the administrative committee regarding the need for an 8-foot pathway along 5 Mile Road or payment in lieu of the sidewalk.
Okay, is there support?
Second.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Boyd and supported by Commissioner.
Excuse me, if you
Yep.
could also.
Sure.
The next line, Tim, said also in contingent that the planning commission finds that the building facade is satisfactory and the proposed parking is okay.
Well, we talked about the parking. I don't think there's any issues with the parking, and we looked at the renderings. We can just add that.
Okay. And given that the planning commission finds that the proposed building facade is satisfactory in design and massing, and that the proposed parking is sufficient for site demand.
Okay. Okay, so we have Commissioner Boyd made that motion, and Commissioner Pop supported it. So all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Good luck.
Thank
Welcome
you.
to the community.
Thank you, Kendra. Okay.
Okay. Next is application 2541, Fire Station Number 2. We have the planner's report.
All right, so this is for Fire Station Number 2, which is located at 41212 Wilcox Road. That's at the corner basically of Schoolcraft Road and Wilcox Road. It is currently zoned public lands. There is the existing fire station is there now. And the proposal is to demolish the existing fire station and construct a new fire station in its place, approximately just over 10,000 square feet. The site design and the zoning, as discussed, complies. There's an existing fire station there now, and that is a permitted use in public lands. The dimensional requirements and the setbacks, everything complies with the proposed new fire station. In regards to preservation of site features, a total of 22 trees are being proposed to be removed to accommodate the expanded station's footprint and extended parking lot, as well as a new stormwater detention pond is proposed. A lot of those trees are too small to be counted for the ordinance for replacement, and some are undesirable species. Only 4 trees that are proposed to be being removed require replacement, and the replacement value has been provided. It is our recommendation that the tree number 798 identified on this tree survey as a 3-inch honey locust be preserved by slightly adjusting the radius of the very western curb approach, which we will talk again about in a different section. The impact on public services is subject to approval by the fire chief and engineer. The vehicular access and circulation, the 2 curb cuts are being proposed on Wilcox Road. And again, it is recommended that the radius of the westernmost curb cut be tightened to allow for the preservation of tree number 798. And then there are screened dumpsters that are located on the northwest corner of the property that comply to the ordinance standards. Pedestrian access and circulation, there are sidewalks that currently exist along Wilcox and Schoolcraft roads. Interior sidewalks are also provided for the rear parking lot to the building entrance, and they are in compliance with ADA minimum standards. Landscaping, screening, and buffering is one of the larger items to discuss. Their tree replacement and street trees do comply with the zoning ordinance, but the parking lot screening and stormwater basin landscape requirements are not met. We do propose that to fully meet the landscaping standards, additional screening is necessary along the western property line, as the adjoining land to the west is residentially zoned and is used for that. Given the land that is available, an evergreen screen is recommended. We list out in our report here how that standard could be met with the evergreen screening. In the landscaping plan that was provided, a proposed berm and grading, they must be depicted on that landscaping plan. Right now, it's being shown as a landscape bed on that landscaping sheet. So again, they need to increase the screening there to the west from the parking lot, as well as the new proposed stormwater detention basin does not have the required native plantings for stormwater. So that would need to be added. Parking and loading both comply for the what is provided. In terms of building design and architecture, again, we're dealing with the 75% masonry requirement. The calculation has not been provided for this review, but based off of looking at the plans, it is our understanding that it's probably close to being met. They're probably at or just under that 75%, but that there is quite a bit of masonry. And then, final building design and palette must be found harmonious, and it is our determination that the proposed building is very similar in nature for design with other municipal buildings. So we don't have a concern there. Signage would be addressed in a future review with our department and building, and the exterior lighting requirements to comply. So in summary, again, we need to address if a waiver is appropriate for the 75% masonry facade requirement. We also would like to see clarification if rooftop equipment is being proposed, and if it is, the method of screening that needs to, that will be used for that. And then I think probably most importantly, we need to see submission of revised landscaping plan that addresses the outstanding items that were identified for the screening and the stormwater basin.
Okay. And the engineering report?
From an engineering perspective, the plan is to reuse the existing water service that's already there. There's a 16-inch transmission main that they're avoiding that ties into that water tower, so that's somewhat of a big deal. And then from a sanitary sewer perspective, they're going to rebuild that existing sewer service, but in a similar location. From a stormwater perspective, this is a little bit different than typical projects because the township has its own MS4 permit, meaning we have our own stormwater standards for our own sites that the township owns. So this is actually going to be reviewed and mandated under the township's MS4 permit and not the county's. So there are some different standards to that will require some variations. But overall, nothing on here that doesn't meet engineering standards, so we're recommending approval.
And as one would expect from the fire department, they found no deficiencies for the fire station.
Boy, what a relief.
So is there someone here to speak to this?
Good afternoon. Mike Malone with Partners in Architecture. Joe Valeri also with Partners in Architecture. We got the comments and we really have no issues with anything that's been stated. There is one comment from the planner regarding saving a tree that's close to the egress point of the apparatus bay. We'll study that to see if it's feasible. It might make sense for us to try to move it. It's not that big of a tree. We could save it and move it if that's better. The question about the 75% masonry. We actually did a calculation and we're closer to 87% masonry. And we can forward a diagram to you. Joe created this beautiful diagram here for you. We can email it. When you take out the large doors, the wall area that's left, 87% masonry. And there was a comment or a question about approving materials or if they're harmonious. We actually brought some physical samples we'd like to show if that's what you're looking for.
Yes.
Of the brick and the metal roofing and a cementitious siding that kind of looks like wood. We should probably show some of those, Joe. And then, rooftop equipment was another comment. There is no rooftop equipment. The mechanical system is actually inside the building on a mezzanine. There will be like an exhaust fan or something towards the back of the building. That's the only thing that you're not going to see it from the street. So we're pretty clean on the roof from that perspective. Yeah. So Joe's going to grab these brick. We can just walk them around. I can help.
Sure.
So the renderings that we showed, we have two colors of brick. So the idea is there's a reddish brown brick and a lighter orange brick. The intent was this reddish brown kind of matches this building, maybe plays off the township hall, I guess, or the other fire station. And then this is a complementary color that's used throughout. There is a masonry base, which is, a split face, look like stone, but it'll be underneath the brick. And then there's some cast stone sills and so forth that kind of looks like limestone. That's your, go ahead, Joe.
Oh, yeah. We've got some composite panels here that look like wood siding, and we'll come up with some kind of a pattern for them. But when you look at the elevation, you can see that that's on the upper portions of some of the facades of the building. And then all of that is just topped with a standing seam metal green roof, similar to what you have on Station Number 1.
We can walk these around if you want to see them both.
So that's similar to Hardy board. It's a trade name, I know.
Yeah, it's a composite material.
Yeah.
It's a cementitious.
Right.
These colors may tweak slightly, but they're pretty close to what we're hoping.
Very nice.
And that would be like those. Point does, because they've got stuff that looks like metal and it isn't.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah, we've been using a lot of metal siding that looks like wood.
Yeah, well, so you go backwards, right.
So hopefully we've addressed those few comments. Oh, the landscaping, no issue with adding some screen trees along the residential area, as well as the detention pond. That's something we'll get over to you, no problem.
Mike, I just discovered this thing. Wow. Yeah.
Looks expensive, but that's not our job.
No.
Not expensive. It's a quality, high-quality building that's gonna last you a long time.
As public buildings should be, I think.
Low maintenance, very low operational costs. That's what we strive for.
Yeah. Do you have any questions on the trees? No? Okay. Any other questions on any other
Sorry to
aspects of this?
disappoint.
We all set? Okay. Well,
Anybody want to talk? Is there anyone from the public?
okay. Is there anyone here from the public that wants to talk about this? Express their opinion? Okay. All right. Well, we're ready for a motion.
I move that we approve the tentative and final site plan for Fire Station number 2, PC number 2541. I don't know if there was any special requirements, right? No? Just
No, they've pretty much met everything
okay.
because they made a calculation about the masonry
Yep. Yeah,
percentage.
they were above 75, yep.
No
And
rooftop
we've
equipment.
already talked about rooftop.
Yep, no rooftop.
Said they would meet the requirements of landscaping.
Right. So,
Okay,
But number 3, there's the administrative committee for the revised landscape plan.
yeah.
So you could just say the items in the recommendation of the McKenna report.
okay.
Just say,
Yeah.
okay.
And it'll be based on a number of recommendations, although I think we've solved that. 75% masonry is solved, the rooftop is solved, and resubmission of a revised landscape plan.
Is there support?
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Pop and supported by Commissioner Boyd to approve application 2541.
2541.
Yeah, 2541. Subject to any conditions in the planner's report. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, great.
We're emptying the room from front to back.
All right, moving on to the Crest Haven cluster housing option. Planners report.
Yes, all right. So this next item on the agenda is the Crest Haven cluster housing option, revised cluster housing option. I'll give a brief summary of the site and what step of the process we're on. So this subject site consists of 2 parcels, which will be reconfigured should the cluster housing option be approved by the township. If approved, the 2 existing parcels would be reduced in size, retaining their 2 single-unit structures with access from Canton Center. So the newly created parcel would contain the Crest Haven development at 6.49 acres. And then the So the applicant is seeking to establish or to create I'm sorry, excuse me. So the Planning Commission is here to determine whether the site is eligible for a cluster housing option, which would allow up to 19 units to be developed on the site rather than 13 units, which would be permitted by right under a traditional subdivision development, which would be permitted at this site as is. Because we have had 2 public hearings and this is the 3rd meeting on this topic, I'm going to move to our summary on page 6 to discuss the items that we've reviewed thus far. The cluster housing option, is an alternative method of development, requires a public hearing, recommendation, and review by the Planning Commission, and then finally approval by the Board of Trustees. Following cluster housing option approval, a site plan would then be required. The proposed cluster housing option needs to reflect the 5 basic principles outlined in the zoning ordinance. The purpose of the single-family cluster housing option is to permit optional methods of development and arrangement of single-family structures on parcels less than 40 acres gross area, which applies in this zoning district, which provide design alternatives which are compatible with the existing and future adjacent single-family subdivisions. We do find that the provided designs are compatible with existing and future single-family subdivisions, and which meet one or more of the following characteristics. We find that because of the parcel's peculiar configuration, it would be difficult to develop under traditional subdivision requirements. It also requires meeting these 5 principles. First, that it meets its spirit and intent, which we just discussed. Vehicular circulation. There has been a traffic study performed, and the proposed vehicular circulation, it is not found that the proposed interior circulation system would be damaging or would be necessarily material impair the intent of the zoning ordinance or public interest. The proposed facilities are consistent with the surrounding area and would be located in a manner that protects adjacent single-family homes. The applicant has provided landscaping and buffers between the proposed development and the adjacent uses. Screening and landscaping is provided. So the applicant has also provided a alternative landscaping plan, or an alternative stormwater management plan, which demonstrates an alternative way of laying out the site, which would replace 3 or 5 existing units. As we shared this with you today, it was an additional element proposed by the applicant, and it was reviewed in the site plan, but we have it at your desks with you now. There's an alternative. There should be each of you should have a, did we share them with the group? Or were they just stacked right there?
No, they were.
They were passed, sorry. So this alternative has been proposed. This would, instead of replacing the existing trees on the north side of the property, this would relocate the detention pond that's proposed. But it would come at the cost of 3 or 5 of the units, depending on whether an option, a smaller or larger pond, was provided. So this alternative could also be considered as an option to approve, for the Planning Commission to approve as an option.
So the detention basin would go on the south side of Balsam Drive?
No, the detention pond on the proposed would go, or yes, I'm sorry, on the south side of Balsam Drive. So it would, basically, if you were entering the site from Canton Center Road, instead of being on the north side of the property, it would be on the south side of the property.
They'd lose 2 lots,
They would lose at least 3 lots.
at least 3. And why would we do that again?
So in the past, so the Planning Commission has primarily discussed concern with the replacement of or largely discussed concern with the replacement of the trees that are on the north side of the site. So the applicant has proposed this design as an alternative which would protect those trees. So the Planning Commission can discuss whether this proposal would so this proposal would preserve the stand of trees, which is largely invasive or low-quality species, and would lose 3 to 5 units. But it is up to the Planning Commission whether that is an acceptable alternative site layout, if that would ease their concerns.
Excuse me, so the applicant's willing to go down to like 14 to 16 units?
I think this is the answer from the applicant to my request at the prior 2 meetings that they present to us an alternative that would retain the tree stand in the north end of the lot. And if I'm interpreting this correctly, what they're saying is they can do that, but it comes at the cost of deleting 5 lots along the south. The engineering department came back and said, well, okay, if you should incorporate a retention wall in this option because you had a retention wall in your original plan. That would reduce it to 3 lots lost. And then I believe there might be an option to actually get us to 2 lots lost. If we were to extend the north retention pond into an L shape into what is now marked as the rain garden, I think you could make up enough that you would only lose 2 lots. Now, keep in mind that, and I'm sure you all will have a comment on this, but keep in mind that under the normal zoning, if we don't do cluster housing, we would have 13 normal-sized lots and no common areas. They're asking for 19 lots. If we were able to get the retention pond down to a net loss of 2 lots, that would end up with 17 lots. So we would be going from 13 with no cluster housing to 17 versus their request for 19. So most of the way there. So that then brings us up to the question about the quality of the trees in the tree stand. If you go back and look at the
Wait, can I just interrupt for a
Yes.
minute? So we're kind of deviating from your planner's report. So I think the discussion, we should just lay that on the side. And because this is new information, just hot off the presses. So we'll direct our comments on this. But Jeremy, are there any items in your report that we should discuss tonight as well? Or where are we with your report?
Yeah, no, I think from an engineering perspective, the Margate subdivision left a stub out road, so the intent would be to connect onto the stub out road and come back out to Canton Center. We asked the applicant to finish the paving of Canton Center from the Margate, where Margate left off, to the southern limits of their property, so they've shown that here. As far as a water and sewer extension, there were water and sewer extensions left on the Margate subdivision. They're taking off from that and looping them back to Canton Center. So from an engineering perspective, they're meeting the expectations of where we would be looking for it.
Okay. So now we'll focus on the information that just arrived today, so.
Well, I think he's correct in the fact that we did talk about the 5 lots being lost versus the 3 lots, and there is an opportunity to potentially make that an L shape similar to the way it's shown in the current site plan and reduce those lots even further.
Okay.
So I think we left off, Dennis, said we didn't cover the eligibility review section.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Well, we probably should do that first. Be sure that we're not
I agree, yeah.
barking up the wrong tree here. So why don't you continue on?
Right. So, as I stated when going through the cluster housing option eligibilities, we did find that it complies with the basic purpose of the cluster housing option requirements with the size, the zoning, the design alternatives that they provide, and that the parcel does apply, the state of the parcel does qualify as one of the 4 items that can qualify a site for the cluster housing option, primarily the peculiar configuration of the site. The circulation on the site, plan for the proposed development will provide a connection of an existing stub street, which was agreed to be, which was originally planned to be continued as part of the Margate development earlier on, or in a past review cycle. So this is continuing that original plan that would continue that road through, provide that connection. It also provides it paves the entire road down in front of the south single-family property and up slightly beyond the northern single-family property. And a traffic study was provided that didn't find that it would create a serious impediment to neighbors. In terms of the stability of the site, the proposed development does, the developer provided additional elevations and architectural designs that go into more detail. They would be custom homes, but they would include at least 40% of the facades would be masonry on all sides. So in relation to adjacent properties, it would continue that single-family character. They have also provided, they've preserved a significant amount of the bordering of the trees bordering the properties as much as possible. And they have provided an alternative, and there will be buffer areas between adjacent properties and proposed development areas. So the capacity of the site is the question of whether the proposed development would impact the capability of public services is addressed in Spalding's review letter. And we've kind of discussed that a little bit with the alternative stormwater plan that was laid out. So if the alternative design is, the commission can discuss this alternative design, provide guidance to the applicant if they would like alternatives to be drawn up and presented. But based off the information submitted, we recommend that the Planning Commission discuss the alternative stormwater detention plan with the applicant, provide direction as that plan may influence the overall density of the site. We do find that they comply with the basic requirements of the CHO, and it's up to the Planning Commission if the alternative options could provide an improvement and would be more consistent with the zoning ordinance. Thank you.
Excuse me.
And Jeremy, you've covered your points in your report.
Yeah, I think the only thing we didn't talk about was traffic, but, you know, as they mentioned, the traffic generation is pretty minor for this site compared to adjacent roadway.
All right, so we'll move back into this issue about the, storm retention and the issue of the quality of trees. So I'll let you
Okay.
do that.
Well, first of all, I'd like to address the applicants. Thank you for putting together this alternative plan, and thank you for providing a much more detailed recap of the trees in the large tree stand. That's all helpful. I appreciate that. I think one of the questions that I'm struggling with here, obviously, you all know I've been a big advocate to try to retain the tree stand. What are our other options? I do want to point out that under the cluster housing eligibility review, basic principle number 1, purpose, and here I'm quoting from page 8 of the planner's review, section D1 says, one of the requirements for a cluster housing is that one of the following characteristics applies to the subject site. The parcel contains natural assets such as a large stand of trees. And this in my opinion, qualifies as a large stand of trees to be looked at. So in other words, part of the rationale for having a cluster housing option is to be able to retain a large stand of trees. However, as the applicant points out, the majority of those trees are what would be considered undesirable trees. However, the issue here is comparing existing trees, which are in some cases not all that desirable, versus the installation of new trees. So if they were to replace those trees, they would obviously not include these undesirable species. However, if we retain the large stand of trees, there is quite a bit of undesirable trees in there. However, they're relatively mature trees that are 30 or 40 feet tall and provide a lot of shade and create a natural area that I believe is part of the intent of cluster housing is to retain. I'm kind of on I'm kind of on the edge on this board as to, whether it's better to retain the large stand of trees, even though some of them are quote undesirable, versus just going with the original plan that gives them the 19 houses and they cut that tree stand down to 0 and replace it to some degree with fresh trees that are more desirable species. The one other point that I wanted to make was that on this alternative plan, do we have the one that was given here? Can Bob bring that up today? Do we actually have that?
I don't have that.
Okay. Well, let's go then, Bob, if you can go to page,
That was emailed to us. So do you have access to that email?
Not
Not immediately?
Not on this computer.
Oh, okay.
What time was it emailed?
Like
Around
around
11
11
o'clock,
a.m.
I think.
Oh, I was tied up all day.
well, what I want to do is the alternative plan, there's two versions. The developer originally showed 5 lots being lost. With the input from the engineering department, it showed that this could be done with only 3 lots lost. I think we could actually get to 2 lots lost. But in order to explain that, I need to have that plan up on the screen. So let's see if that would work.
Okay, because I don't think I don't see it in my email.
Yeah, it was,
Bob, if you could bring up on the main deck page SW1, I can probably explain it from there.
Well, let's see if you can find the.
Yeah, that would be
new plan.
preferable,
That
but
would
if
be
that
the
doesn't work for.
preferred way.
So what are we looking for?
Which would it be?
It was just email.
It was it was only shared with our department. It was shared with our department. I'm not sure of the date actually, but it wouldn't be on the website. It was part of we did review it, but it wasn't included in the packet.
It was just sent to you.
It was
Bob.
sent to you this morning, so,
Well, part of the question I think that you want to raise is the quality of the trees versus are they worth saving?
Right.
And then the report does mention the ecosystem.
11:50
That's where
to
such trees are
10:50.
associated with an ecosystem to be preserved. So do we ruin the ecosystem if we take out the undesirable trees?
That went to a group planning commission.
And the screening and the buffering as well.
Maybe if we have the original plan up, you could talk through the
Yes.
changes.
Yeah.
We shouldn't waste more time trying to find it.
Oh,
Which page
okay.
number was it?
It's
that you liked?
page SW1. It's called Alternative Stormwater Exhibit.
Second, let's see if I can pull it up on my email. I don't want to. Okay.
That's exactly it. Okay, if I can come around, try to,
You can use the cursor, something to point to things.
by the way, I went to a Office Depot to get a laser pointer and they don't make them anymore.
Oh, I have one if you think I should, yeah, I used to bring it in before we kind of switched to all of this.
So what do you want to do with this?
Okay, so let me, if I can just take over the control.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So the developer's original response to my request showed that to be able to save this tree stand up here, which is where they wanted to put the retention pond, they would move it down here. It would actually take up 5 lots. The engineering department came back and said, well, you have a retention wall on this one up here. If you put a retention wall down here, you can actually get it down to this size. So here you're only losing 3 lots. My point is that this is also a retention pond up here. If we were to extend this retention pond east into this area, which right now is proposed as a rain garden, we might be able to make up enough that we would only lose 2 lots right here. In other words, this area right in here, the dotted line right there, we need to find that additional amount of retention pond. And I think that you could make it up in here, or at least that's my thought. I'm not an expert. So that would then mean we'd only be losing 2 lots from the applicant's original proposal. So then the question for the Planning Commission is, from the perspective of Plymouth Township and our residents, what's the better approach? To keep 19 houses in here, and keep in mind that the applicant's proposal does have a lot of benefits. It has, natural areas that are retained. It has a area in the far northwest with new trees. There's a lot of positives to their proposal. So do we keep that, tear all these trees down, clear cut this, and keep the original plan? Or do we look at a plan here which keeps this area, even though it's not necessarily the most desirable trees, and sacrifice 2 lots down here? So we would go from 19 to 17. So that's, I think, the question that we now have. If we think the 17 option has some benefits, we would need to have the developer go back and do one more look to see if my idea is actually feasible. So that's the alternative I wanted to suggest. Is that
Thanks,
clear?
Tim.
Okay.
So the applicant is here. So who wants to come up and talk about this? Give us some reaction.
Leo Gonzalez, on behalf of Pulte, Phoenix Management Holdings, Roman numeral 2. I'm going to just start off with some of the broad comments that I'm going to bring up. My engineer, we have the engineer in attendance tonight, Andy Wozniak. I have Brian Devlin in attendance here this evening from Devlin Landscaping, and he's our expert in wetlands and woodlands. We also have Adam Reed here from Pulte. So we are very excited to be here before you this evening. Let me go back to the last meeting that we had 2 meetings ago, because this has really been a culmination of all of the input that we've gotten from the Planning Commission over the last 3 months. When we originally came to you, we hit up all colonial products. Pulte has built in your community most recently, and Andover Forest, great success project, had sit there stagnant for years. They came in, built it out in 12 months. As many of you may know, Pulte probably started off with one of the biggest lifestyle communities in Plymouth dating back to the 1990s, which is Country Club Village, as we all know it. So they have a record here. Their communities make a impact and continue to make an impact. I'll let Mr. Reed kind of pick up from there. As we got the feedback from the Planning Commission, there was emphasis on us having a product that was a ranch. We went back to Pulte and said, hey, got to introduce a ranch here. Makes sense. There are a lot of people living in these single-family neighborhoods that would like to still maintain a residence in Plymouth, move out of their single-family residence into a ranch. That's a great way to open up other opportunities for new families to come to our community. So we introduced this ranch. You'll see it on the site plan. So that's going to be another product. So now we're covering that. They call it, I think, mixology of products. We evaluated the woodlands. I proceeded then, after the first meeting, to go to meet with every one of the neighbors adjacent to this property. A total of 20. And we took them our landscape plan because, as you know, we're adjacent to the neighborhood to the west, which is Trillium Street, and we're adjacent to some of the neighbors to the south, which is along Canton Center Road, both on the east side and west side of Canton Center Road. So we went to the people that were adjacent and said, here, we like the landscaping you have, because with this project, there's a conservation easement that's between our project and the residential neighborhood. So nothing can ever be built in that other than the trees we originally established or agreed to in the landscape plan. And of course, those trees then will continue to go on, whether they're spruces, whether they're deciduous, whether they're ornamental, will continue to go on to be maintained by the residential neighborhood. Very unique, because now the neighbors next to us can count on that stand of trees being taken care of. We also wanted to create what we created on our easement, which was to the west along Trillium, as well to the south, that is shown on the landscape plan, is we wanted to add our various trees and greenery to complement what they had. So in some cases, I took some of our greenery out, added some deciduous. Some people said, hey, I'd love to have some more pines. So we didn't go in with the idea in mind that we were only going to plant X amount of pines, X amount of ornamental. We wanted it to be something that was really well thought out and complementary to what the neighbors already had. And then we just counted it up and said, we got 87 trees between pines, deciduous, and ornamental, which, mind you, exceeded the amount that we're required to do under the tree replacement, because the trees that we cataloged here, none of them were under protected status. So we've had a real good interaction with the neighborhood. And then most recently, I went back to them with our final landscape plan, passed it out to all of them and said, here, this is what we look like. By all means, if there's any adjustments, we're willing to work with you. We want to be a good neighbor. We want to have a community that is going to complement their value and be a nice transition to their neighborhood that's already there. So we looked at those in very, very detailed. One of the other elements as part of this development is a pocket park. We felt it was so important to do a pocket park here. Something that was where the kids, not just a park that was not passive area. I was a firm believer that we've got to have an area where people can go throw a football, kick a soccer ball, have it be landscaped in such a manner as a sort of a secure area where the kids can play with a picnic bench, with brick pavers, something that's a destination for the residents as well as potentially their friends coming over as well. It's available to the neighborhood. It's right as you come in the entrance of the development. It gives you the sense that you don't have any homes on either side of your property. When you drive in, until you get past this pocket park, then the houses begin. So from the streetscape standpoint, you still have this nice greenery area that's been there for over 100 years. So we looked at that, and those are part of the cluster housing option. In order for us to do those, we have to consolidate some of the product and create these open areas. Well, the net result of that is going with the cluster housing is we are able to create more open space. I'll defer to my engineer. He'll tell you more about the specifics of that. So this was kind of the catalyst, but to create a premier neighborhood within the community. And what a wonderful opportunity to be able to build a product where people could still walk to their elementary school and walk to their middle school. That's, that's kind of how it was. That's how those two schools were designed many years ago. As you know, throughout the Plymouth area and Canton area, they have these neighborhood parks neighborhood schools that people walk to. So this was just a compliment. We're an extension of Margate. Margate did a great job over there. They had a different strategy. We kind of looked more carefully at us replacing more trees. We far exceeded the amount of trees that were required, but we didn't look at it that way. Like I said before, we looked at it from the standpoint of how can we be a good neighbor? So, these were kind of the ideas behind this. We've got front porches, so it'll be an inviting area where you can walk down the street. Some people have large porches, some people have smaller porches. The ranch is a nice complement because we hope that we'll get some people come on in there that are empty nesters that want to live in a neighborhood with children. Or you might just get a couple that don't have any children want to live there that are in their young professionals. We've seen that happen. This ranch does also have a loft, so it has the ability of some flex space if you wanted to add another bedroom up there or another loft room up there. A little bit more broader, maybe product that'll appeal to the customer. So we did carefully look at all your comments, and the detention pond, we looked at that, and we felt having the detention pond behind the two homes or that are going to continue to stay there was more of a good element for this development. And then all it comes down to is the other element of the road. We are paving, and I don't know how many of you drove down that road in the last 2 weeks, but I hit it twice in the last week. And I mean, it's jarring when you get to that pavement off into the gravel. We're gonna pave 650 feet of that. That is a substantial amount of investment to do that. You cannot balance the cost of a road like that unless I have enough units to sell, enough units to develop and sell, so we can afford the investment of that road. So, some of these things do come at a price, but in my feeling is that we haven't compromised. We're getting more units, yes, but the neighborhood's getting conservation easement. There's another easement that we didn't talk about. We're actually creating a woodlands easement. I'm gonna have Brian talk a little bit more about that. That's a natural, not even a passive area. That's an area that we're gonna plant. We're gonna put wildflower mix in there. It's located in kind of the northwest property of this development, just as you go into Margate. That's gonna be a nice element just because it's gonna be a wooded stand area. There are 14 trees in there that are gonna remain, and I'll let Brian talk a little bit more about that. So all of these elements kind of add up to me to be a more quality project, and based upon the fact that these cluster is available, we have an opportunity to offer more to the community, i.e. the roads, as well as offer more to the community of the people that are going to live there via the pocket park and so forth. With that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Andy, and he can talk to a little bit about the specifics. And then we'll have Brian come up as well.
Good evening, Andy Wozniak with Zymo Wozniak, we're the civil engineers. When we left the last meeting, we had some action items that we needed to address. And Leo's talked about architecture and also the traffic study. It was mentioned that it was completed. That was one of your action items. And I'm gonna leave the detention basin until the end. We'll talk about that last item. Canton Center Road paving, Leo touched on that. The CHO versus conventional open space. With the conventional layout, we'll have no open space because if you take out the area for the detention basins, there would be no open space with conventional layout. But with the CHO, you're getting 100% more. Landscaping, Brian's going to address, as well as I don't know if he's going to touch on this, but somebody brought up the item of some kind of a tribute to Farmer John and Farmer Jay, I'm sorry, thank you. And a note was put on the plans that they're going to install a metal plaque on a stone in the pocket park honoring Farmer Jay. And then finally, one of the review items that came up in the letter was a crabapple tree that is designated as a heritage tree. It's located right along North Canton Center Road. And it's actually a tree that has seven trunks. So when you add it up, it comes up to like 84 inches, but it really is just 7 trunks. So we didn't even consider it a keepable tree. I mean, it's really not a pretty tree. It's not very tall, but it can be saved. We can keep it. But I'll let you guys make the decision on that because it can be saved, but it's not a great tree. And it also has it's in a poor condition. So I want to get back to the detention basin. We did develop that plan. Thank you for pointing that out. We developed that plan at your request to show what could be done as an alternate for stormwater detention. Is there a possibility we can bring that plan back up?
Closed it. No, I closed it.
Okay. So the original design would eliminate 5 units, and then it went to, and that was a conventional design. And then it went to review to SDA, and they came back and said, well, if you do the tiered system, which we were proposing for 19 units, if you did it, we could reduce it to 3 lots. And that's what they thought, and we concur. We went through the process, and that's what we can do. However, then it would be split between 16 units. So it's a very expensive thing to do, building a tiered detention basin. You have to do extensive walling all the way around it rather than just grading it. So we do agree that it will lose 3 lots. And then to address your point on the continuing that L-shaped, we require 26,000 cubic feet of detention. If you look at that little detention area just on the north side of the driveway and the other driveway, that's 540 cubic feet. So connecting those 2 L's, you're going to gain like 200 cubic feet of detention. I mean, we need 26,000. So if you push that over, I wish it was up on the screen. If you were to push that over, can I come over there and show you?
Yeah, go ahead, come on.
Would you find? This is something I know you're thinking about this.
Mm-hmm.
This basin right here doesn't just go to here. There's a 25-foot setback that you have to adhere to. And
Okay.
that's one of your requirements.
Mm-hmm.
So that basin actually would come to here. And there's not nearly enough volume. You can see how much volume. We're losing maybe a third of our volume.
Okay.
And adding this little guy right here is not going to make up for this right here. So it's not just a matter of moving this over to here. You got to go 25 more feet. So that's why you're going to lose the 3 lots.
And you couldn't make a real narrow
This,
down
again,
here?
it's the 25. This is 25 feet. This is 25. Well, but you could connect it like that.
Right, yep.
But again, that's like 200 feet. And then you got 25 feet. You got 25 feet all the way around this. So that's the design challenge. And I know SDA could back this up. So you can't get that volume. You lose 3 units, and you'd have to terrace it. And again, that's a lot of cost when you divide it by 16 units versus 19 units. Thank you. And I think that wraps it up for me. I was going to let Brian address the quality of the existing woodland area, and then also the proposed woodland area. Brian?
Brian Devlin with Nagy Devlin Land Design. I'm the landscape architect on the project. So in terms of the trees that we're desiring to remove, this is an area that seems to be the working area for the farm. So there's several piles of spoils of soil. And that's where these trees are growing. So they're not, it's not a gentle sloping area. There's actually mounds that are left over from working the farm. One particular area has a root cellar. I don't think they dug down to go into the root cellar, but rather piled soil up to form a root cellar. And again, these are trees that are successional trees. They come in first. If you leave a property alone, you'll get cottonwood, you'll get box elder, you'll get black cherry, you'll get, well, in this instance, also Siberian elm. So these are things that kind of pave the way for sugar maples, beech trees, those kinds of things, the climax forest. What we are doing, though, is providing a significant number of new trees, and we're also saving a couple of heritage trees in terms of the sycamores that we're saving on the west property line that are part of that 20-foot conservation easement. So we are actually saving the two best trees on the site. So they will be a part of the project for as long as they live. And again, we're providing areas with creating a woodland with a significant number of new nursery stock trees. There's a significant number of plantings around the pond as proposed with the 19 unit development. So again, and we're planting things like sugar maple, oak trees, those kinds of things, which are high quality trees. Based on the discussions from the previous meeting, I believe we added a 20-foot easement along the conservation along the north property line, so between Margate and ourselves. And in that area, we've planted a significant number of trees. So again, I know we're removing trees, but we're certainly planting a significant number of trees also.
I have a question. So and I presume, did you read the planner's report?
Yes.
Yeah. So there is this paragraph or discussion discussing the trees and the ecosystem that's created by these existing trees. Can you expand on that at all, or your opinion?
It's a relatively small area. I know it looks big, but it's a relatively small area, and there's not a lot of diversity. There's not a shrub layer, a ground layer that you would consider a pristine ecosystem. So the other thing, though, that I think is important is we forget about the two lots. There's a significant number of large trees on the two lots that are going to remain, which are, I would say, 20 trees that are mature, full-size trees, 30-inch trees. So, and we did look at saving trees where we could. So we saved a large box elder. I'm not against the box elder, but we're saving a 36-inch box elder in the northeast corner next to the pond. So, and we saved some box elders along the property that abuts the home that is of the two on the south side. So we're saving trees along there. The reason that the crabapple was shown to be removed is it was very close to the corner clearance of the entry drive, and it's a wide tree. But in terms of saving that, we can save that, but it's going to have to be pruned to maintain that 3-foot to 7-foot visibility to the road. So it can be saved, but I think it would need some pruning to do that. And again, it's kind of I don't want to say sterile ecosystem, but it's box elder, Siberian elm is the majority of the species there. And that's 2 species of which the majority of this woodland is.
Yeah, that's the quandary. Reading through this and looking at the landscape plans that were submitted, that I'm sort of torn about the tree population and the ecosystem. Yeah, they are.
Can I ask a question? Your plot does show a lot of trees on lots 18 and 19, and I think you mentioned that we need to keep that in mind. However, when you actually look at the building envelope on those 2 lots, I would presume that the majority of those trees will be cut down just to make, obviously, the foundation of the house itself. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
The other thing is those trees are growing up the side of a pile of soil left over from farming. So I don't think in your backyard you want a berm that's 5 feet tall.
So I think it's given that we're going to lose most of the trees on lots 18 and 19, regardless of whatever we do elsewhere. In other words, whether we kept the tree
Well,
stand
with
or
the-
made it a
with the-
retention pond, we're still going to lose the majority of those trees.
Yeah,
on
with
those
the
2 lots.
storm line that needs to run at the back of the lot, you're not gonna be able to do that with this 5-foot mound that's there.
Okay, a couple other questions. I had a certified arborist come in and do some work in my own home a couple weeks ago, and I asked him about the fact that most of these trees in this tree stand are ranked as fair to poor. And he told me that in most instances where you're looking at a established tree area, most of the trees will show as fair and poor. That's how certified arborists calculate them or grade them. So that suggests to me that this tree stand is not significantly worse off than other similar tree stands. I also just would make the comment that we don't have a lot of tree stands left anywhere in Plymouth Township. First of all, we don't have a lot of vacant space left, but within the vacant space we don't have a lot of tree stands. The ones we do are probably, and this is my supposition, but probably a lot like this tree stand. So anytime we look at this, we're probably going to be looking at tree stands that are not the quote desirable species that we would plant if we were doing all new. So I'm struggling with this myself. I appreciate the work that you've done to give us more information. I appreciate that the team did the retention pond alternative. I'd still like to see my idea tried out just to see if it possibly could work, but I see on a high level, you're saying it can't. I just worry here, folks, that, we don't have a lot of trees left in Plymouth Township, and I don't know where to draw the line. And I think it's up to us as a board overall to make that decision, and I would ask that each of you do that for yourself, not just because I happen to be advocating one position.
The advantage to our plan is that the tree stand essentially is going to move, and it's going to move to the area between our development and development to the west, our development and the development to the south, and our development and development to the north. So really, all 4 sides of our development is going to have trees on it. And these trees are going to be significant in a 5-10 year period.
No doubt, and congratulations to you for that. Just want to point out, though, that it'll be 20 or 30 years before those trees are as big as the trees we'll be cutting down in the tree stand. So, it's not exactly an apples to apples comparison, but I acknowledge your point.
But it would be this is what I debate as well, but there'd be higher quality trees than
No
what
doubt.
currently exists, so.
No doubt.
Just one other point is those trees that are being planted will be protected by conservation easements.
Any other people coming up, Leo?
Hey, good evening, Adam Reed, Pulte Homes of Michigan. Leo did a wonderful job of talking about Pulte's history and the city and the township, really going back, 30 years or more. As you mentioned, there isn't an abundance of land left in Plymouth Township. So when Leo approached us for this opportunity, we jumped on it. I mean, Plymouth is a wonderful community, wonderful school district, and this will provide a move down buyer an opportunity to age in place in the city of Plymouth. Well, I'm sorry, Plymouth Township, while also allowing move up buyers, families that are growing, have walkability to schools, and really just further solidify the community.
Okay. All right, so where do we take this now?
That's what I was wondering.
I got,
You had an idea.
Leo?
Been thinking about it all
I've
week.
got a couple questions for you, if I can. So you added a ranch to the mix of things. Have you kept in the first floor primaries on the other ones also?
So.
I think last time we talked, you were doing like maybe 5 first floor primaries.
7 now.
Okay.
So what happens, we went through the whole lot configuration, and 7 of the lots will support a master bedroom on the first floor.
Okay, cool.
That allows a nice, a nice selection, because we got 19. And, I can't say it again, because it's worth saying, because I know, because I live in a neighborhood with a bunch of aging population and would love to be able to move out and stay in the community. These will be a valuable 7 or 8 homes. And I can tell you, some of the people in Trillium have already approached us and said, we actually want to move out our colonial, move so, this opens up a whole host of opportunities. And I know that, we're potentially losing some stand of trees, but it's our goal is that the benefits of 650 feet of pavement, a conservation easement, a area that we call new woodland creation. Clearly, we're gonna create a new woodlands creation that's gonna be part of the association, that they're gonna maintain it, that these benefits and a pocket park are gonna far outweigh the fact that we're gonna lose a stand of trees. Because the alternative is, there's so much more benefit from a cluster housing option versus us having 13 regular homes, maybe doesn't offer a ranch on the first floor because the market probably wouldn't support that now. And then all these elements of this green belts go away because it's not a requirement. At least now you have something you can put stock in, a development agreement that we'd obviously entered into. Well, it's actually a condo association because, and part of those are the guidelines that we take care of the landscaping. So this, we hope, will have a much more meaningful impact on the residents of the community as well as the adjacent residents, which we know will have an impact on the adjacent residents because they don't have the benefit of this right now, of these 12 or 13 homes directly to this project. There's more people impacted by it, but 12 or 13 homes directed, that those benefits outweigh the stand street, the stand of trees that we are discussing.
I have a question, though. This kind of relates back to some of other discussions that we've had over the recent years on the buffering, between your development and the existing. So will very many of these trees be removed in order to put the storm lines through? Because that's been an issue in the past.
No, that's a good question.
That's a very good question. And the answer is no. What we did was we made those lots along the perimeter extra deep to accommodate these easements or these conservation easements. So we're going to put the storm sewer in front on the house side of that. So we're keeping the trees that are there. We're putting new trees in, and the storm sewer is going to be beyond that towards the house.
And how wide?
And all the grading too.
How wide is that easement?
It's 20 feet along the west property line, and it's 10 feet along the south property line. So all those lots are extra deep to accommodate that. Yeah, and then along the north, abutting Margate too, I think that's at least 20 feet or so. Could be more. And then the north, of course, the northwest corner is where the dedicated woodland is going. Protected under conservation easement.
So,
Yes.
all the trees and woodlands and that, is that being taken care of by the HOA or the condo association? Is that how?
I'm gonna let Leo address
How it's
that,
being handled,
yeah.
or is it by each individual? The question was the woodlands or the trees along the property lines, is that a HOA or condo association that's
HOA.
handling that, or is it each individual?
No, HOA, because.
And I guess, just so that when you're answering my question, the properties that are on Margate that are backing up to the woodlands and stuff like that, how is that handled?
So there's only one property, there's two properties that are adjacent from Margate on the north side. One is right next to our newly created woodland area. I actually went and knocked on her door today, dropped off the plan, because she wanted us to expand, and I think we made some improvements to that. And then another home is on the east side of that Margate Road. They call it Balsam. And that one, we did a really good job of putting these 8 to 10 foot spruces. So we originally only had 3 spruces across that area. We now have 9. 9 that vary between white spruces and Norway spruces that vary from 8 feet to 10 feet. So, a spruce is a big tree. You plant a 10-foot spruce tree, you start making a significant difference. And they grow. So, you get 5 years of growth on these spruces. So that's the screening between the two projects. So we were very conscious. We did that for Margate. We also had a neighbor next door that has frontage on Canton Center Road that came out, and we wanted to address his concern because he understood that we were building there. And that's where we left the box elder in that corner. But to complement that for better screening, we added those spruces. But to your point, or to your question, I should say, yeah, these become part of the HOA. So here's another benefit. If that tree dies down the road, the HOA's got to replace it. That's people understand that when they buy into an HOA. Versus a conventional development, somebody could build wherever they want in their backyard, maybe not build anything, and you don't really have those control measures in place. So for a lot of reasons, these CHOs have far-reaching benefits for the communities that they live in, for the people that they live in, such as these open areas, as well as the people that are adjacent to these areas.
I got, if you mentioned Fellows Creek earlier, I think you did. If you look at that development when Pulte came in and did that, whatever it's been now, like 20, 25 years.
27 now.
And, they pretty much clear cut, and it pretty much still is clear cut, right? So you guys at Pulte are listening to us and them, and I think you're doing a fine job. I mean, it just, you're starting with something, at least these neighborhoods have growth in them right now versus Fellows Creek, who you just basically pointed out. A lot of those places never planted even shrubs in front of their houses, so.
But, to the point of that, Country Club Village, people came in there, they planted extensively. Yes, it started off as a farmland, but drive through there now. It's a great setting. 25 years happens really fast. I know. I'm part of that 25 years, And so, we're not building these neighborhoods for tomorrow. We're building them for the next 30 years, the next 40 years. All of our significant neighborhoods have been here for this long. So, there are some setbacks you might perceive that you go through when you build these projects initially. But the long-term gain And to have, let's just call it 14 more families that come to our community, that go to our schools, which are in need of students, they're losing students. We're down 500 to 1,000 students. Every little bit helps these neighborhoods. And then the 7 people that come out of the neighborhood that were in the single-family homes, we'll call it Country Club Village as the example, 7 more families move into those 7 homes. And now all of a sudden I got 19 homes, new homes to the community that have 1 or 2 or 3 children that are part of the community again. Here again, the next generation. Little pitch, had to.
There are some people here, I'm not sure if you have any comments that you'd like to make. Again, it's not a public comment meeting, but we're open to always hearing residents that sit so long through a meeting. So if you have anything you'd like to share with us, you have 3 minutes. Nothing? Okay. Just give us your name and sign in.
Yeah, I'm Mary Ann Schickman, and I live on the lot on Margate side there. So I do appreciate, I understand going back and forth between a CHO or a single-family normal subdivision. It seems like no matter which way you go, that stand of trees is going to be affected. I do appreciate the landscaping plan that you've developed. I think I brought it up in a previous meeting that when they did Margate, the back 12 feet of those lots that abut the farm, there's a swale that we can't plant in. We can't put in any kind of hedging or shielding. So I think that conservation area you're putting in there is perfect. And I know, the people in Trillium have the same concerns. There's a lot of open backyards that go into that farmland, and that farm's been there forever. I've been in the Plymouth community for 35 years. We're one of those people that wanted to downsize to a ranch. So there is that ranch sitting there. And there are about 6 or 7 couples in Margate that are people that have downsized. So I do think there's a need for the ranches that Pulte's proposing. So I don't know. I kind of like the idea of the CHO. Margate has turned into quite a nice mix of residents. There's young couples in there that are just getting married, starting to have kids. I think we've been there for almost 2 years, and I don't want to tell you how many new kids are in that neighborhood now that weren't there when they moved in. And there's like 6 or 7 of us retired people. So it's a nice blend. Yeah, so the lot sizes are manageable for people. So I don't know, I guess I'm saying I would support the CHO concept. And if it was a single family neighborhood, I think you'd still have the issue of that stand of trees. So I think you're going to have to make decisions on that no matter which direction you go. I think that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
That's valuable. Okay. Well, part of this, of course, we have to do findings of fact. Unfortunately, I'm somewhat disappointed. I had asked at the last review meeting, you had, I think, the attorney write a letter that outlined the differences between Margate and what you're proposing. And I wanted to go over that again to refresh my memory. And in our packet, he has another letter in there, and he references it, and he says it's attached, but it wasn't attached. And so I asked the planning department to send that out. I still didn't get it. Personally, I would find that useful information to have to help me think through why we would want to support this option, so, yeah,
On the
sure.
cover sheet of Crest Haven, all that information is on there.
Is this the one from you, this one here?
No, on the actual plan cover sheet.
Oh, on the plan coverage. I did read it. So is that everything that the attorney had?
Yeah.
I did read
He
that.
summarized this, and he just basically said the differences between Margate and Crest Haven. So it's this right here.
Okay.
And then these are the differences between a CHO and a conventional.
Right. Okay, so
So
that's
you-
what was in his letter.
Yeah, so yeah,
All
and you
right.
can see, I mean, various things like,
Okay.
Margate took out
Okay.
402 trees and we're taking out, whatever that is.
Yeah, I wish I had known that that was what was in the letter.
Yeah.
So I would add, there was a lot of discussion about replacing trees that are undesirable species and, or maybe on, piles of dirt that could turn into berms with trees that would be of higher quality that would grow up in a few years. But I would really recommend that we have, if we do take that option, that we have some tight control on that. I live in the sub that has been discussed, and when Pulte planted the trees in that sub, every tree that they planted really poor quality trees. There's a lot of nice trees in that sub, but those were the trees that the homeowners planted, not the trees that Pulte planted. Pretty much almost all of the trees that Pulte planted were 25 years later are junk. And the ones that are nice trees in that neighborhood are the ones that the homeowners planted themselves. And I have personal experience with that.
And we've heard that from the public when we had the public hearing on this too.
Did
The
you?
quality, yeah, about the quality of the trees that were put in Margate.
Yeah, they put in, what'd they say?
It was poor quality.
They put poor quality trees in there.
I'm not so sure if we
There's a
should.
history of Pulte doing that.
And really, we should, there should be a way of grading trees. I'll ask the landscape architect. So is there a method where the landscape, vegetation is graded, so we could perhaps put that as part of conditions of approval?
New material?
Yes.
Well, it has to meet landscape standards it's, the name escapes me now, but there are standards for new plant material.
So there
Grade A
So
nursery
like
stock.
meat, like meat would have, or eggs would have, or?
I'm sorry?
So like similar to what we would have with meats and eggs and produce and that kind of thing?
Well, that's federal.
Well, I know,
Federal,
but
yeah.
I'm talking about the system.
Yeah,
Classifications.
there's a horticultural standard that must be met in terms of nursery stock trees, so. And notes on the plan say that they have to meet current standards of arboriculture, yeah, so.
Yeah, well, I can tell you some other things where they planted and meet standards and the things have all died.
I can speak to the
Yes.
landscaping. So the landscaping once it's, the final site plan would determine the final layout of the cluster housing option shows the areas that the trees would be provided and, the number of trees that would be provided. The site plan approval would, lock in the approved locations of the trees. And the landscaping inspection, which the township performs landscaping inspections, I believe 1 year or immediately after planting, and then they follow up a year after to confirm that the trees have been planted appropriately and that they are healthy and that they're thriving and they're acclimating properly. So I can't speak to how that's been done in the past on past projects, but I can tell you that we have a process in place at the township to check on landscaping after it's been put in. So that would be kind of a built-in condition of any development, is that their landscaping is sufficient, is planted in a way that is acceptable to landscape.
Yeah, but you don't come back 10 years later and see what the results
We
were.
don't come back 10 years, I mean,
And
there
when
are
they use
blight,
poor quality
additional
trees, 10 years
standards.
later, they're crap.
Yes.
And there may be that process, but I think there's a loophole in that process because the person who's put the trees in, I'll call them the developer. And I can tell you right where this is, and maybe some of the members of the commission will remember, they planted those trees and then they asked for an extension. They don't get that final landscaping approval. And then they ask for extension after extension. I don't believe there's a limit. And meanwhile, the trees are half dead, they're leaning over, and now you're looking at junk, dead trees, because the township hasn't been putting that final stamp.
Yeah,
So-
no, I think that's a valid
So
concern.
I think that
you know,
needs to be looked at.
I didn't mean to say it should be a concern. I
Yeah,
just wanted to
well,
make
yeah,
sure we
I
were
know,
aware of
I know,
the.
but I think there's a loophole in that. Okay, well, what are your thoughts? How do we move forward, or?
I think everybody's heard everything that there is to hear, and it's time to make a decision, and
So we move forward or we go back to the original plan with these exceptions?
actually, I would say there's probably three options. One is to, and correct me if I'm wrong, one is to say we don't accept the cluster housing option. It goes back to 13. The second is we accept it as proposed. The third is that we ask for any additional information that we would need to make a final decision. Is that a correct, or Kendra, would that be a correct list of the options, do you think?
I think so. Is there a clear, it doesn't look here on our report like there's a clear recommendation. No.
Yeah, so the recommendations kind of summarized on that table. We found that that all of the conditions of the cluster housing option apply, and ultimately the recommendation is up to the, sorry, I had the wrong page up here. So the recommendation is ultimately up to the planning commission because it's one of the more discretionary approvals that you guys have. So you can recommend approval, or you are able to recommend approval at this time of either of the two alternative plans, or the original Crest Haven plan or the alternative stormwater plan. Or you could request additional information. You could table.
Can I ask you, what additional information would you find useful?
Just if we could actually determine whether extending that northern retention pond east toward Canton Center Road into the rain garden is actually feasible. The engineer said on the surface he doesn't think it is, but you could still go through the calculations. It might get us right back to where we are right now, I admit that.
But we have to do due diligence and explore alternatives. So I don't know, what are the thoughts from the commission?
So not to revisit what has been decided, but it's late and I'm trying to refresh my memory. Are we all in agreement that the 8 criteria of the cluster housing option have been met?
I think so. I mean, it seems like the only thing we have is a conflict, without everyone speaking, but there's a conflict of where the retention pond should go. And, I'm gonna put my foot across the line first, and I think that we should go back to the original plan. The other thing we should do as a township, because we have put a lot of people through a lot of anguish, because we keep doing this to ourselves almost on every project that runs across our table, is find an arborist that can tell us whether these trees are good or bad. Because if we would have done this 4 months ago, we wouldn't be sitting here at 10:15 or 10:10 tonight. At least this plan would have been moved forward a long time ago. And that's just a personal observation. But I think we need to somehow incorporate everything that these people have put in front of us. But I think we have to go back because we keep asking and we're not giving. And if they do all this and we say, we want you to lose 3 lots, that's income out of their, which, they're in business, they might walk away from this project. We know that happens. But I think that we should go back to the original thought, what was proposed, or some facsimile of it, but incorporate the rest of this conservation, the woodlands, and all that. That's my opinion. I don't know how you word that. Kevin?
The ordinance says, is that the planning commission's options today are to approve the cluster housing option, approve it with conditions, or deny it. Approval with conditions would be a matter that's within the discretion of the commissioners.
I think the only, and they have come a long way, with the mixture of the housing stock, the conservation areas. I think the only thing that the concern is that this stormwater and the number of lots. But ultimately, the Board of Trustees will have the decision and they can decide.
But so the original cluster housing option was to put the storm in
Yeah,
here.
cut down all the trees and put the veg pond there, correct?
And then if you put it there so you don't lose the lots, are you planting stuff around it, or is it still a kind of a park-ish at that point, or it's just a big piece of land with a big retention pond in the middle?
I think a point that you might want to consider is that whatever you decide tonight, if it goes to the township board, they will have the ultimate decision on whether or not to grant the cluster housing option. If the township board approves the cluster housing option, according to section 22.8.1 of the zoning ordinance, cluster housing approval shall not constitute approval of a preliminary plat, final site plan, or final site condominium plan. So what you're considering tonight is only the cluster housing option. And whether or not, as Commissioner Dorashevitz pointed out, did the applicant meet the criteria set forth in the ordinance to permit the commission to recommend approval or approval with conditions of the cluster housing option?
When I said 8, I misspoke. I meant there were 5. I mean, we just blew through them really quick, and we didn't really stop to take a breath to see, do we agree or disagree?
Well, maybe we should stop and take a breath and just look through those and see if you agree. I mean, the trustees we've made recommendations to them before with clustered housing. They have sent it back to us and say, they weren't happy with the number of units and try to reduce it.
And if I could just say something, I've been pretty outspoken on trees and trying to retain trees in the township ever since I've been on this position. I would ask each of you to look at this yourself and don't feel like you're going to offend me if you determine that you think this is the best interest of the township. I urge you each to make your own decision based on your review of these criteria, and I won't be offended if you decide it's a go. All right? Is that cool? You know what I'm saying? Okay, so thank you.
So, Kevin, one more time, I can ask you one more question or clarify. So if we vote tonight to recommend this to move to the Board of Trustees, there's the that doesn't necessarily lock where that retention pond is gonna go, correct?
I would defer to the planners on this, but on the face of it, it does appear that that would be part of the site plan. But I'm going to defer to the planners on that.
The cluster housing option, the placement of the detention pond would be a major aspect of the cluster housing option. So it would essentially be the basic plan, the location of those lots, the location of the detention pond, those major elements would be locked in, and a revision of the cluster housing option would be the quantity of the lots.
Locked into as in possession, or
it would be
position of it, or just that it has to be there?
Sorry, that it has to be there. I mean, the position of it,
And I guess my question is that if it doesn't have to be locked into a specific part or position in that property, and we can see if the trustees approve of the cluster housing option, then at that time, they can research Tim's idea or go back to the old idea.
No, so when you approve a cluster housing option, you'll need to name which site plan you're recommending approval, and it would be, if it's the original, which we've been discussing, it would actually be I think it would be the second one, the July 15th document, which was the one that was discussed at the Planning Commission meeting, the last Planning Commission meeting where we discussed the Crest Haven. Or it would be the alternative site plan is the one dated 10/16. Sorry, the cluster housing option, the plan that you adopt is what you're agreeing to as the cluster housing agreement, cluster housing option that you're recommending approval of. So the basic elements of that cluster housing option, the major elements, anything that would be a major change of that would be not, it needs to meet the basic, elements, and anything that's a major change would be a revision of the cluster housing option. It would require coming back to the Planning Commission. And
basically what they're saying is this project is financially feasible at 19 homes. If we were to go ahead and approve it, but then ask them to come back and revisit where the pond goes, no matter which option you look at, they're going to lose lots. So it could become, it's a major change.
But they're not, but if we go back to
where,
the original one, they're not losing lots.
I know, that's why I'm saying, if you approve that as the plan, it's not realistic to come back at a later point and ask them to reduce the lots so we can move the retention pond.
so if you approve the cluster housing option today, you would be approving their right to have 19 lots. I think that's the most important.
And
we're approving 19 lots.
Right, and based on the work that the applicant has done, it's pretty clear that.
There's only one place for that.
Yeah, exactly. If you remove the retention pond, you're not going to be able to have 19 lots, whether it's 17 or 16.
Okay, so then my next layer of questions here, sorry, is that if we approve the CHO, and now that we know that has to be in, how do we ensure the perimeter and the conservation?
Well.
So you're having a problem
yeah,
with
no,
it's
conservation.
Yeah, I mean, and is there a way that we could word that into it? I just want, we need to put this to bed.
The conservation easements outlined on the plan would also, I'm sorry.
You could make
the applicant's proposal.
The cluster housing option approval dependent upon certain conditions.
Okay.
Those conditions should be specified in the recommendation to the board.
Okay.
So if we're leaning in a direction of approval, we have to give statement of facts. So we should probably start jotting down what we think those statement of facts are. And one of them would be that they meet the criteria of the CHO. I mean, do we agree with that as a group or as a majority of the group?
They seem to. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's one statement of fact, that it meets that. That's probably the key thing. Yes.
There's been several
Is your question answered?
Yeah, so.
Okay.
You said it would be the original?
Did you say it was the plan dated July 15th?
Well, the plan dated July 15th was the one that provided a little bit of additional landscape areas and conservation areas.
But that's not on
Is that
there.
actually the one that
latest set
we're
of plans is
kind of
dated,
making a decision
Yeah,
on?
what is this plan? It's not based on this plan that we've got in front of us? That's dated,
10/18? The plans dated 10/18 have additional trees, have the Farmer J sign.
Okay.
Has the additional paving of the road. All those action items we got at on the July plans were incorporated into the
Okay, so
10/18 plans.
The plan is in your packets, and the plan that's available at in the township offices is the plan that would be
Yes, sir.
approved. There's an alternative exhibit.
so what is this plan?
That is the proposed site plan.
I know that.
As opposed to the alternative.
As
And
opposed
that
to
one
the
should be dated 10/18.
Well, I gotta see, these are all, because I want to make sure we're doing it.
I thought it was. I'm sorry that
When you said 10/16, right down here. We submitted 10/16, right there.
Oh, okay. So the 1016 plan is the one that we're.
10/16 or 10/18, I can't read.
10.
Some of the young guys over there told me it was 18.
Yeah, no, it looks like 16. This looks like 16.
10/16.
That's the latest set of plans.
Okay.
It has
So
all the
this
stuff you
is
asked
the
for.
one that we're basing a decision on.
Right. Then that incorporates, again, the additional paving of the road, some additional trees along here and here.
Right.
What else did we do? All those action items that you asked for in the last.
Well, and I'm comparing, the reason I asked about this comparison between Margate and yours is to see, okay, well, we approved Margate
I know.
with this, and then I'm seeing what you're offering. And, I mean, to me, I was thinking, well, it's just, how could we?
I mean, I see the stand of trees and I see it continuing here. Did it continue into Margate, which had 402 trees removed?
Yeah.
I mean, we're asking for 66 trees or something to be removed.
You have access to
You said,
No.
It's the thing about these trees, they are not good quality trees.
Well, yeah, but they're also 40 or 50-year-old
Well,
mature
I
trees
know,
in a
I
tree
know,
stand.
I
It's a
know.
trade-off, and I don't know the answer
It is a
myself.
trade-off.
It really is.
I'm okay with these.
I am.
Kendra,
I'm
what?
okay with it.
So this says 5/16 on it.
It's
The
down
pages that
here.
have been.
See this
Yeah,
date
see
right
the
here.
revision dates on here.
Oh, the revision date on the table. Oh, yeah.
What do you think?
Look, if I could offer something for the board to consider.
I'm gonna go with this. Pardon?
Yeah.
7:15, resubmittal 10:18.
Yes.
If I could offer something for the planning commission to consider.
Change table. It's got those 3 days.
So it would,
If we could promise ourselves that in our master plan update, we're going to define a more prescriptive description of tree stands and their benefit to the community, as well as to ask the board to amend our tree ordinance to reflect that more precise definition of a tree stand, I would be willing to drop my opposition on this. So that's,
Well, I think we need to look at the whole landscape. Well, and the other thing is, so if we approve this, so we've all agreed that it meets the criteria. So should we, and we're concerned about this landscaping, should we say that there should be a grading of what kind of landscape puts in, or I don't know what that grading is.
I don't
how
know
we
either,
would
and
define
I
that.
think to your point you mentioned to me is, if it's not in the ordinance, it's kind of hard to
Right, but this
enforce.
is an option, so there's room to maneuver.
Well, as I said, I'll drop my opposition if we can agree as a planning commission to
do
take a
it, yeah.
look at a more precise description of this for our update for next year.
Well, what do you think about identifying a standard of what kind of landscaping material should be put in?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to define that.
We'd have to do some
Somebody says
research on
like
it.
it's a quality tree because it meets the minimum standard of, but, you know.
Because I
doesn't
didn't
mean
buy
they
it at
planted it
Lowe's
right
or somewhere.
Pardon?
I didn't buy it at Lowe's. I
Yeah,
bought it
right.
in English Gardens. or
Lowe's
whatever.
has, I'm sure the trees they sell at Lowe's meet those minimum standards.
Okay.
I would be shocked if they didn't.
You know, a lot of it has to do with how the tree is planted.
That's a
and how-
major issue.
And how it's looked after the first year. And, you know, a lot of that depends on the homeowner.
Yeah.
If the tree is properly watered during the first year, particularly if it's a dry season, it'll be okay. If it's not properly watered and it's a dry season, it'll either lose branches or it'll die. That's been my experience from 30 years of involvement with trees. I don't know how you capture that.
And we're okay with 19 units?
Yep.
Okay. Any other things that you wanted to, I think the key statement of fact would be that it meets the principles of a CHO.
Yeah, yeah. The principle of what?
Principles of the cluster housing options. 19 units. Is there anything else that we need to put in this as part of the statement of facts? And I'll ask the attorney, do you think we have our bases covered? If we say in our recommendation that it meets the principles of the option and the units would be 19 and landscaping would be a, I don't know, high quality nature, but I don't know who determines that. What standard is there?
You're asking the wrong person to
Yeah, I
answer
know
that.
about that.
I can answer legal questions.
Well, are there
I can't
anything
answer
else to,
horticultural.
and that we need to put in our
I think
motion?
that the commission needs to make findings of fact on the statements of principle set forth in Article 22 of the zoning ordinance. And if the commission, in its discretion, wants to impose further conditions based on what's been set forth today, and maybe based on what's not been set forth today, that is discretionary within the commission.
Well, that sounds good.
Can you repeat that?
Okay.
Just that last sentence.
If the commission, first of all, the commission needs to make findings of fact on the statement of principles set forth in Article 22 of the zoning ordinance.
Yeah.
Step one. Step two is, if the commission, in its discretion, wants to impose conditions upon the approval based on what was discussed tonight, or even what was not discussed tonight, then that is discretionary within the commission. So you should first make findings of fact on the statements of principle before you vote on whether or not there's going to be an approval, denial, or approval with conditions. After that, discuss with yourselves what you want to do with respect to additional conditions that would be part of the recommendation for approval of the cluster housing option.
So findings of fact on the 5 basic principles is what you're
Yes.
saying? Purpose, circulation, stability, screening and protection, and capacity are the 5 principles.
Yes.
And we have to make findings of fact. Should we do that on each one individually?
Ideally, yes.
Couldn't you say as stated in the planner's report?
You could, because the planner had questions about principle number 5 in the report.
Right here.
Page 7.
So we're back in where we started.
You can say that the planning commission determined that
Make,
the alternative stormwater detention design didn't meet or was not a realistic option. You just say that.
Yeah.
So therefore, principle 5 is satisfied. So what you're saying is, for the findings of fact, we can state that the planning commission concurs with the planner's report that the 5 criteria do apply in this proposal.
And that and what you just said
Yeah,
about.
and then we determined
right,
on number 5
right.
that the alternative stormwater detention design was not a realistic alternative.
Right.
And that 19 units are approved for the site plan of October 16th of 2024.
And I would also like to add that this portion of our minutes and motion are included in our recommendation to the Board of Trustees, because I keep hearing that they'd like to know how did we arrive at these decisions, and I don't believe, get an adequate picture of that. Anything else?
You're good at writing, you're really good at recapping these. You want to take a whack at it?
I'm just going to leave that for you today.
No, I'm not doing that. Not on this one.
Based on the 5 criteria for cluster housing option.
If you go to
You took some notes too? Did you
page
take some notes?
6.
Did you have anything to add? Yeah, you.
Did I take notes? Do you want me to make a motion?
No. Well, I don't care. You can make it.
No, I'm fine. I'm for the motion, I just don't, if you want to help me through it, I will
Okay.
make the motion.
Okay,
All right, so I'm going to make a motion
okay.
that we approve the recommendation to the Board of Trustees for approval of the CHO for subject number 2526, Crest Haven Cluster Housing Option. Per the criteria that is set up by the CHO and the planner's recommendations, we see that the principles have been met, and we request, or we approve up to 19 units.
So, but before you do that, the part about the retention.
Number 5.
Right.
The retention design.
On the principles, we find that number 5, per the planner's recommendations, was not realistic, and we've eliminated that. Opposition? Is that good?
We would say that the alternative stormwater design was not realistic,
Okay.
and therefore, principle 5 capacity does apply. So that we did meet it, yes.
And the part about the discretion that Kevin told us, did you take a note on that?
Yeah, so might need your help through stumbling through this one. So
The part about the discretion.
about the part of the discretion of the commission.
Yes, if the commission desires to impose additional conditions on its approval, that is within your discretion.
And we also need to.
So what are the additional conditions that we're imposing?
Yeah.
There aren't any.
I don't think there are any right now.
Right. At this juncture, there's not any.
But that's the recommendation of the attorney.
If there are any.
If there are any.
If there are
I don't
any,
know,
right.
We don't have any.
we don't have any.
At this juncture, we don't have any.
But could we later? Could we later have some
No,
restrictions?
we're
Or is
making
this
a,
Conceivably, if the board decides to remand,
yeah.
the option, the cluster housing option, back to the planning commission for further consideration. But if the board elects to accept the commission's recommendation without conditions, then you're not going to be able to impose on any more conditions.
And that's what happened before.
Yeah. Right,
They sent it back and then we reduced it.
right. So unless there are any conditions, I don't,
Don't need that last sentence.
you don't need
correct?
that.
Okay.
The one other thing we need to reference is the,
To simplify it, we're recommending approval to the board of the cluster housing to the Board of Trustees based on the 5 principles of, the 5 basic principles spelled out in the planner's report, with principle number 5 being, the objection being met or removed. And so therefore, this is eligible for a cluster housing option because it meets the basic 5 principles.
the one last thing you need to add is that it's based on the plan as of the 10/16/24 proposal.
Right, based on the 10/16/24 plan, that's what we're trying to say. Right?
Right.
That would appear to be more of a specification than a condition,
Right.
but it should be specified.
And specify that a copy of our minutes, this portion of our minutes, not the whole minutes, just this portion of our minutes, including the motion, are included in our recommendation to the Board of Trustees. That doesn't happen, and it raises questions. Are we happy with that? So Ladowit made the motion. Who's going to support it?
I'll support it.
Okay, Commissioner Pop supports. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Yeah, it was a weak eye, no doubt. But it was an eye. Okay.
No, I think we have to.
Oh,
Yeah.
Hey, Dennis.
Don't we have to approve this?
Dennis, we need to.